I hereby announce that the date is June 25th, 2026, and the time is 6:02 p.m. No voter action was taken in executive session. There being no further business there, we will return to the regular agenda. And going to the regular agenda. The first thing we do is take up the meeting with item number 4, which is the Pledge of Allegiance, invocation, and we have no absences, so we don't consider that. And we'll have, please remain standing after the pledge for the invocation. Mr. Mike Armstrong will be the one doing the invocation. Join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight grateful for the privilege of living in and serving this community. We ask your blessings on this city, on the leaders gathered here, and on the citizens whose lives are touched every day by the decisions made in this room. Grant this council wisdom to govern well, courage to do what is right, and humility to listen carefully. Remind us that a strong community depends not only on elected officials, but on us as a people who are willing to be engaged, respectful, and united in purpose. I pray for everyone here tonight to have patience in disagreement, grace in conversation, and a shared commitment for a common good. It's your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Armstrong. We appreciate your sharing those invocation thoughts with us. Okay, we move on to speaker protocol. Those of you that picked up an agenda or have been here before, you know that we try to have all the speakers. There won't be too many tonight, but those that are here to honor the 3-minute requirement. There's a timer down there on the podium that you can follow, and I'm sure everybody will stay within that. We do have a presentation, one proclamation tonight, so I will come down in front. This is a presentation recognizing June 27, 2026 as American Business Women's Association Day, and we have a group of people who will be coming forward, and I will call out their names along with is Joe Beth going to lead that group? Come on up front. Also, Rhiannon Whitney, Tina Duncan, Holly Pritchard, Laura Cates, and Jessica Harmon. So if you'll join me down in front, I'll come down there and read the summary of the proclamation. Thank you. Thank you all for being here. Go, Beth. Okay, I'm going to read a summary of the proclamation. This is American Business Women's Association Day. As mayor of City College Station, I'm officially proclaiming Saturday as American Business Women's Association Day. Founded in 1949, the ABWA has spent decades empowering women through leadership, education, and networking. We are thrilled to welcome association members from across Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Arkansas as College Station hosts the 2026 Women's Celebrating Women event today through Saturday. Thank you all thank you all, our women business leaders and professionals, for your vital contributions to our community and our economy, and certainly to our future. So I'll present the proclamation to this group, who is representing a much larger group in the community, American Businesswomen Association. Who's going to accept this? Whoever the leader is, or whoever wants to.
Yeah, I'll take it.
All right, well, we're going
Should have
to
thought that through.
stand right in the middle. Where'd you go, Joe Beth? You're not going to be in the picture?
Okay.
Here, let me get between you.
Okay.
How's that? Oh, we got a center under this,
Yeah, you're
under
right.
that. We got to move over, move over a little bit. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go back to the For those of you in the audience don't realize how active the press is in this community. We've got communications people wall to wall back here. So our meetings are well covered, and this must be the place to be on a Thursday night. I think we'll certainly have a good meeting. Thank you. Okay, now we go to hear visitors, and I do have several people signed up to speak under hear visitors. These are items that are not on the agenda. I'm going to start with David Johns, who will be followed by Ivan or Ivan Rechek. So, Mr. David Johns, I'm sorry. You're first. You have 3 minutes.
Oh, thank you. I own HS Construction and HS Roofing. We're Aggies, old school Aggies. 30 years been building commercial and residential homes from Miramont to India Lakes to everywhere throughout College Station. My concern is the drivers, the kids. What are we going to do to prevent accidents that are happening? I see every day. I drive probably 3 to 4 hours every day from project to project what I built. And what I see is the out-of-control texting. And the other thing I want to bring up is what are you going to do with the new kids coming to Texas A&M in the fall that are brand-new drivers, just left mommy and daddy for the first time, and you got all this road construction. You're going to see, my professional opinion, a lot of accidents. I see people hitting the walls every day. So I'm just trying to prevent accidents, from the scooters to the crazy jaywalkers to the motorcycles to people with out their lights on at 6 a.m. So I'm a builder. I do it from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. every day. We do a great job here. We love the community, but I'm just a concerned resident. That's it.
Thank you very much, sir. The point is well taken. Staff is continuously working on distracted driving issues. We do have a hands-free ordinance in College Station, so I'll refer that to staff, and they will continue to increase the engagement that they have. Mr. Ivan Rechek? Or is it Ivan?
Ivan, Ivan, I don't really care. But
Okay.
Ivan Svirchek is my name.
Ivan's fine.
So I'm a resident of Bryan, and I work down in Welborn. I would like to talk to you today again about the ALPR cameras that are popping up in our community and the United States as a whole. That United States as a whole aspect is something I'd like to talk about today. Now, when one's talking about a few cameras here and a few cameras there, we naturally think of them as a small system, a few points on the road that are useful for our local county and city police to keep track of a couple of movements around town. But, as stated by Flock Promotional Materials, The usefulness of LPR grows with the size and reach of the network behind it. What we're really talking about is a large network, and I think a good way to understand that aspect of our current system is to look at our own audits. Now, the City of College Station is hiding those audits, but the City of Bryan has released theirs, so we can talk about those. The search audits are tiny in comparison to the actual data, but it's still a huge amount of data. So in order to make the information and numbers make more sense, let's focus on something smaller. Let's look at the first 2 weeks of April from this year. So between April 1st and April 15th, Bryan PD searched their flock network data 337 times. Obviously, they share with the county and College Station. The county searched 64 times and College Station 275. But what about others? Does anyone else look at that data? The answer is yes, most definitely. Over that 2-week period, there were another 198,286 recorded searches from another 409 organizations. Let me say that again, 198,286 searches in 2 weeks from 409 different organizations besides our local officers. A large number of those are from Houston, DFW, other counties in Texas, like you might think. But there's also small balls, things like Oklahoma, Ohio, UT Dallas, Baylor Scott and White, and of course, the Union Pacific Railroad. Now you have to ask yourself, do I trust all of those organizations? Do I even know who has access to all this data? Can I tell all the citizens who drive around here that this massive map with pictures and records of their locations is completely under control? That database can never be leaked and can never be misused against them. Thank you for your time. That's all I have.
Thank you very much, sir. Third on our list, someone I've already spoken with today who helped in another meeting I was at, Miss Ellen Fuller. Please come forward. Ellen is a very active volunteer in the community, and I was at the naturalization service ceremony this morning, which she always is there and always helps to organize. Ellen, what do you have tonight for us?
Just wanted to say thank you, Mayor. It's good to see you. But I wanted to say happy birthday, America. As you know, America 250, and thank you to the College Station folks for I Heart America. We've been working with the wonderful Parks and Rec folks on the new pole banners that you see 17 of them at Veterans Park. We worked with the Brazos Valley Veterans Memorial Board. If you look across the street, we also see that we now have 14 over with Texas A&M and 3 at the Bush Library. But forget about pole banners. We need to have this flag out front, don't you think? I left one in Bryan's, the city manager's office, but I noticed that you have one on either side. So hopefully check with facilities. I don't know if you have to take a vote, but anyway, we left stickers, ready, repping the brand. Happy birthday, America. So what do I do next? I still have 2 minutes.
Well, you're making a presentation of those flags. Thank you.
Okay. Bryan?
Yeah. Present city manager.
I don't know what we're doing here, but, all right, thank you. I have one on my desk, and I've got it hanging up so that the creases get out of it.
Yes,
Yeah, so I got it, thank you.
thank you. Have a fun 4th, everybody.
Thank you, Ellen. We appreciate your active participation. You're going to be busy the next couple of weeks. Not that you're busy, not that you aren't busy all year long, but the celebration's going to be going on for a couple of weeks for sure. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move now. Let's see, where am I at here? So we've hit done to hear visitors, so I guess we turn to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has only 4 items on it tonight. 7.1 through 7.4. Any council members have a question they want answered on any of these? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to approve item 7.1 through 7.4. Motion made by Mr. White, seconded by Mr. Wright. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we'll move right on very efficiently. Let's hope we can do the workshop almost as efficiently, but we got some really good stuff to hear. Workshop agenda, Ms. Kane, 8.1, presentation, discussion, possible action related to the capital improvement projects work update, and Ms. Kane is the director. Welcome to our meeting, and we're looking forward to hearing your update.
Good evening, Jennifer Kane, Capital Projects. Tonight's I think it's our first one of this year. We usually do 2 a year of the Capital Projects update. Just as a reminder, these are not all of our projects by far, so we picked a select few to go over. There's certainly been a lot of projects y'all have heard about lately, like the wells, for example, or Public Works, so those aren't in here, but certainly happy to answer questions on anything you don't see tonight. First up, I just wanted to remind everybody, this is our capital projects dashboard located on the city's website. And it has the majority, we actually have about 80 active projects right now, but some of them don't have sites yet, or they're a study or something, so they're not all there. But we have 69 active projects showing on the dashboard. You can zoom in to them and find out more information when you click on them. You can sort by construction or by facilities or parks. So anyway, a really good way to find out some more information if you have questions about it on timelines. And then the most important part is it has, when you click on it, it brings up the name of our project manager. And so if the public has any questions about it, that's the best person to reach out to with questions, and they'll be able to help. First up, to talk about Greens Prairie, the county section, so that last piece in the middle there that's not been completed. We'll be widening the 2-lane road that's currently there to a 4-lane section to match what's happening on both sides. We'll also be including shared use pass as well as part of that. We are currently finalizing the last piece of design. We had we had several property acquisitions to do, and we finally have finalized all of that. And so once we kind of get all of the final acquisitions into the plan set, then we'll release that for bid. And the other piece too, Wellborn SUD has some utilities in the way at the intersection, one of the intersections there at Wood Lake. And so they're going to be moving them this fall. They have to wait until October to take down their water line until once we get through the summer season. So they'll relocate, and then we'll hopefully start our project in 2027. And we expect it to take about a year and a half.
Is that a major transmission line of theirs running through there?
I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
But it does carry some water through it, so they want to wait until October. State Highway 6, you'll have heard about this one recently, but just wanted to touch on it real quickly. So as a reminder, we've got numerous utility relocations for both water and wastewater along Highway 6 as part of the Big 6 project that TxDOT's doing. Y'all have seen 2 bid packages come to y'all. There will be one more bid package that will come back to y'all, which is bid package 3. It's lagging behind a little bit because it does rely on some easement acquisitions that we're still working through. And there will be a 4th piece of it too that will come back. It will be an advanced funding agreement with TxDOT. There's a number of work that needs to be done, but they actually need to do their contractor will need to do some work first, like moving meters, lowering things in sidewalks and in driveways that we really can't do until they get to that point. So we'll do an advanced funding agreement for them to do it as part of their project. So in all, this first bid package is almost done, but once we finally get through all of it, it probably won't be until 2029. But working really closely with TxDOT and making adjustments to work with them and get out of their way as quickly as we can. Jones-Butler roundabout and utility work. So this is the construction of this 5-lane roundabout, which you can see it's kind of not completely round, but it's a roundabout. And we'll have the addition of the extension of Jones-Butler to FM 2818. So that has been under design for quite a while, and we actually just bid it out and received bids yesterday, and so we're reviewing those. We got 4 bids, and so you'll see that go to construction shortly, or it'll come back to council and then go to construction. But one thing to note, it is a roundabout project, but there's a significant amount of water utility work there near the Dowling Road pump station. And so because of that, there's times, again, like I mentioned with Wellborn, there's times that we can take water out of service and times that we can't. So the project will actually go on for almost 3 years just because we're working around the different shutdown times. But we are going to maintain traffic in the area during the project. Next up is Northeast Trunk Line Phase 3 and 4. So Phase 3 is about to go out to bid. We finally got the approvals from TxDOT because we are crossing State Highway 30 and Highway 6. And so that will go out to bid here shortly and come back to y'all for the construction contract. And then phase 4, we're in final design on that one and starting working on property acquisitions. And we may come back to y'all with some property acquisition information here shortly. But we have a number of commercial acquisitions that are going to be happening potentially along Texas Avenue and University. And then we are still working with the A&M system at the Hensel Park lift station and adjusting that easement there. So that'll be something we're working through in the coming months.
I noticed, if you just stay there for a second.
Sure.
Question on the section of Phase 4 that's under Cooner.
Yes.
Do you really believe that capacity is adequate, or is that going to have to be enhanced? It doesn't show it here as being involved at all, but is that true?
That is true. So it was previously done, that section of Cooner was previously done, and it was sized appropriately to tie into this project. There also is another project in the area in the College Heights neighborhood, so that will be coming back to y'all as well. But yeah, that section of Cooner Street that's left blank will not be redone.
Even though the capacity at that lift station over in Hensel Park, you've got to consider all the development that's going on in Northgate plus the university, correct?
Yes, and when they replaced the Cooner line, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, it was upsized appropriately because we knew this was coming.
Okay, thank you.
Barron and Capstone, so it's two different projects. At one point it was one project, we separated it, and anyway, it's kind of two different pieces now of how we're going to have to do it because of the coordination with Union Pacific Railroad. So the first piece is a section of Barron Road from William D. Fitch to Buckingham Circle, where you see in blue. And so that is going to go out to bid here shortly for that section to redo the pavement there and add a sidewalk on the south side. And so right now it's 2 lanes, and it's going to go to a 3-lane section. So 2 lanes in each direction with the center turn lane. And then when you see Capstone, that other piece will pick up there near Buckingham, cross 2154, and then do the realignment across the railroad there. So that one, we are still going back and forth. The Capstone piece, we're still going back and forth with Union Pacific. They had reviewed comments. We had an agreement with them. They did all of that. They've come back and asked for, I don't know, 3rd, 4th round of additional changes. So we may be having to come back to y'all for another agreement with them to re-up that, because it's been going on for a number of years. We've also been working really closely with TxDOT because they have their widening Welborn there. That's pushed out some from whenever they originally started the project. They're still waiting on funding for property acquisition, so they're pushed out a little bit too. But there's some drainage components that we're going to have to do a little bit differently since their project isn't complete at this point.
So it's a TxDOT issue on Welborn that is keeping you from finishing the Barron end of it beyond Buckingham.
Yes, the two pieces are the railroad and TxDOT. Yeah, so there's some drainage components with TxDOT that are causing us some issues until they finalize what they're doing. And a big piece of it is what's happening as we cross the railroad, what that looks like, and getting Union Pacific's approval.
Well, the part on the railroad I can see, but the part between Welborn and Buckingham doesn't look like it's going to be built in this first phase.
It's not, no, because
and that's because?
It's because of TxDOT, the drainage components, and then the coordination with the railroad, because the big thing is we're adding a signal here. And so whatever happens as we cross the railroad, there'll have to be a signal on that side, and until we get their approval, we can't build the rest of the signal because it won't function properly.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So. Rock Prairie East widening, the section from Town Lake to William D. Fitch, which was one of the 2022 bond projects. So we're at 95% design right now. We've completed the majority of our easement acquisitions. We have one more left to finalize. And then the other piece of it, we're waiting on a couple of utilities to relocate. We've had a number that have already moved, including Frontier and Optimum, but there's 2 different gas companies out there. I think it's Enterprise and ETC, and we are working through agreements with them to get them to relocate, as well as we'll have to the one last easement acquisition. So once that's gets through all of that process, we'll bid it out, and that'll be the 3-lane section that you see there in the image. So the 2 travel lanes with the center turn lane, and then the bike lane and the sidewalks off to the side there. So we hope that we'll start construction in fall of 2027. But it'll look, the roadway will be the 3-lane section, but you'll have the same sidewalks that you see on the other piece, and you'll have the street lighting as well, all the way down to William D. Fitch, and it does not meet the warrant yet for a signal there, but we'll have all the conduit in place to be able to add a signal fairly easily once it's needed.
So, Mayor, are we asking questions as we go?
Please. I assume that's what you prefer when you're
Sure,
on,
that's
when the
great.
item's on the screen,
Okay,
please.
so I also have one, just to go back, and you know me, Jennifer, I'm kind of a broken record on these things. I can't read, quite read the numbers on the width of some of these. I tried to on the piece that was sent as well, but just, I'm interested in the bike ped stuff, as you might imagine. Sidewalk, is that an 8-foot sidewalk?
It is, yes.
And then the bike lane is, what is it, 4.5 feet or
I
something?
believe
or
it's 6.5.
6.5, okay. With a 3-foot buffer between the travel lane and the bike lane.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that was the question on that. I'm going to just go ahead now, since I've got the mic, and ask about the Jones Butler piece, the not quite so roundabout, or the not quite roundabout. That's also going to include a connection to Jones Butler?
It does.
That's currently kind of dead ends there, right?
It does, yes. It
And-
completes that connection, yes.
And if I read that right too, it's got bike ped facilities actually kind of buffered from it or adjacent to it.
It does, yes.
Oh,
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep, those are included, all the way around the roundabout and making those tie-ins like along Holloman and Jones Butler.
Yeah, and it goes, cause that to me, that's a really important corridor, that Jones Butler connection, for potentially people living out there in high density housing if they wanted to, you know, micromobility or bikes or whatever ways to get to campus, because that's a direct shot. Thanks.
Yes, sure. All right, up next we have the next section of Rock Prairie. So on the other side of William D. Fitch, where it goes and kind of goes to the end of the city limits in front of Lick Creek Park. And so this section will be a remove and replace of the asphalt that's currently there. We'll rework the subgrade. We're also looking at potential some shoulder options, because right now there's not really a shoulder, so we're looking at widening out just a little bit to add some shoulders for safety, and then making the sidewalk connections along that section. There'll also be a number of significant drainage improvements along this as well, but it will maintain the ditch section that you have there. It's not going to be any underground storm, but we will be doing improvements with culverts and things along this section as well. It's following pretty much the same timeline as the other section of Rock Prairie, and we expect it to go to construction next fall. Krennic Tap, this one is currently under construction. The entire section from the frontage road on Highway 6 to Texas Avenue. We started at Highway 6 and are moving towards Texas. The reason for this, we originally planned the other way because of timing. We're trying to make sure that the section over by Central Park and Dartmouth is all complete well ahead of the Christmas time and Christmas parade. And so right now, they're working kind of on the northbound section, and we've got traffic flowing in one direction towards Highway 6, which will be maintained one way through the entire project, even when we switch sides. And so they're working down on that piece. Up in the coming months, we're going to have maybe some one-way traffic going through the Dartmouth intersection as we kind of make those connections and some of the utilities that fall under that. But they are planned to be complete in spring of next year.
But the Christmas parade,
We'll be fine.
on that end of it, you'll have both sides done?
Yes, we're going to work towards Texas. So we may be shut down. There's a section on Texas, near Texas, we'll shut down there, but that will be happening when we get to the Christmas time.
Okay.
Lincoln Avenue is getting very close to being done. The last section they're working on right now is towards University Drive. There's a section right past the Aloft Hotel by where the new Hobbies restaurant is until that intersection at University. And so they actually paved this week one side of the roadway, and so they'll be finishing the other side hopefully here in the next couple of weeks. Hopefully the rain will hold off so we can get that completed. And then they'll just be doing cleanup, getting some of the grass in place, final signage, striping, those types of things. So we hope, again, weather dependent, that it will be done next month.
So I'm pretty sure most of you know how I feel about that little bitty circle. It's about the size of a extra large, tell you. Just, and I meant to mention this to Woods, if you can get past the little roundabout, the striping looks like my 8-year-old took a can of yellow paint and just kind of sprayed around it. Can we look at that? I mean, if we're going to do something that's awful, we may as well make it look pretty.
Yes, and so some of that is actually temporary striping that we put in place to get it down before they do the final striping, just for a safety aspect, because it's in there. But yes, we will definitely be sure that it looks finished and complete.
Thank you.
Actually, I drove through it today, so I know what you're talking about. All right. Next up, Corporate Parkway and utility work. So this is the work for the property that we own off of Midtown Drive in coordination with the developer looking at doing the baseball fields on that city-owned property. So we're moving, we kind of pushed the utilities package up sooner, and so we're at 60% design that's under city review right now for the utility work, primarily water, a little bit of sewer, and then we're doing the preliminary data collection, so geotech, survey, those types of things. For the roadway. You can see the preliminary alignment there. We're working very closely. We actually have, I think it's bi-weekly meetings with the developer, with our design team, with city staff, and so we're working with them to coordinate all of this to make sure everything works well for the city, and that all of the timing lines up. So
What are those track sizes, the 3 that are created by this roadway?
it says on there, let me see.
I see one, I think it says 23.
I think it's 23, 28, is that right?
Maybe 35 and a half, one of them.
The 3 tracks that we split up for corporate. Yeah, I want to say it's like 30, around 30.
Yeah, they're a little under about 30 acres apiece.
Thank you very much.
Texas Independence Park. So this one y'all are well aware of, off of between Midtown and the Rock Prairie Road, the 120 acres. We are in final design right now for the majority of the work. We did release an early bid package through our construction manager at risk for all of the major earthwork, the mass grading, digging out the pond, those types of things starting on the Spike Hub. And so they did receive bids back, and we're waiting to get all of that compiled, and we'll bring back the first bid package to y'all hopefully at the second meeting in July to get that work started out there. So you should see work happening later this summer. And then we'll release the second package that has, the rest of everything, the rest of digging out the pond, doing all of the pavilions, the playgrounds, all the bike components, those types of things. So the second round will come a little bit later. Lincoln Center area improvements and splash pad. So the first piece I'll talk about is the area improvements that were part of the bond project. You might have seen in the council update, the prefabricated restroom got set a couple of weeks ago. It looks really nice. We're excited to have that. And then they're completing all of the work around that, getting all of the tie-ins, utilities, those types of things. And there's a shade structure as well that will get finished later this summer. And then the second piece of this, that y'all approved the design contract about a month ago, I guess, to do look at the splash pad here to upgrade it, and you can see a rendering here. And so we're in design on that. We kind of, as they work through design and then working through funding, we're going to use CDBG funds and Park Lane dedication to make the upgrades to the splash pad. So the timing may push out a bit on that, but we're doing it all in mind with all of the new improvements that'll be there with the restroom and the shade structure. Thomas Park, so another 2022 bond project. So this one, and then my next slide talks about the roads around it, because we combined, if y'all remember, we combined these projects together under one construction manager at risk. So in the rendering here, you can see a rendering of the restroom and the shade structure that's going to go there. The rest of the park will have different play elements for different kids of all ages. It'll have educational opportunities, historical elements highlighting Mabel Claire Thomas. So it'll be a really neat park. We will likely see bid packages coming out from our construction manager either later this summer or early fall. It may come in multiple packages or may come in one. We're still working through the details, but you'll likely see some work happening around drainage and then moving to the roads and then doing some of the park work. But we felt that it's going to be really good to have it under one contractor to kind of oversee all of that, since it's all in one area. So here's the 3 other roadway projects I was mentioning. So James, Purrier, and Francis, which are redoing all the roads that you see as they're shown on the map. So redoing them with concrete, and then new curb and gutter and those types of things. And so we'll do all of that in conjunction with the park to make sure that all the drainage is flowing properly at the right time, and that there's no overlap where we're damaging something in an effort to construct something else. Fire Station 7, I know some of y'all got to tour it not too long ago. So it's actually a little bit further along than this picture shows. Today, actually, they started installing the bifold red doors on the apparatus space. So the first one is going in today, which it's looking great. The HVAC has been turned on. The landscaping has started. So we are still planning for our grand opening in September of this year. And then the next 2 slides just highlighting, just a reminder, we've completed 4 of our bond projects. And so Bachman got completed, Central Park, the pickleball multi-use courts at Anderson, and then Bee Creek and Central Park tennis courts. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions on this or anything else.
And let me just use Ms. Harvell's comments. Wow. And this is only a small sample of everything the city's working on and your department's overseeing. So any further questions, Mr. White?
Well, let me reiterate, because you're absolutely amazing, because wow, it does not describe what you're able to do. So I am in awe of all the projects that you keep track of. But I do have some overarching questions.
Sure.
And what I did was I took your presentation and I went back to your presentation last year.
Okay.
And this might be more from a knowledgeable educational standpoint from my point, but the numbers aren't matching up, and if you could just kind of help me match it up. I'm not going to go, I have several examples, but I'm just going to go to one example real quick. Let's just take Krenick Tap.
Okay.
Okay, in 2025, when you presented this last year, you indicated that the budget was 10.7 million. This year, it's 11 million. And I looked at our budget for our CIP projects, and we budgeted 10,100,000. Am I missing something? Or the numbers aren't consistent, and I just want to make sure that I'm adding the right things. And Texas Independent Parks is another one that brought to my attention. Rock Prairie, last year you had 24.1 million. This year you have 26.6. I just want to know, did we approve that? Where is the increase? Some of the deadlines that you put in there last year were extended, 6 to 8 months. Totally understand that. But do our contractors, are they still under the obligation to meet their deadlines and stuff? So I know that's a broad question with a lot of semi-questions included, but where do the numbers come from? I'm looking at Jeff over there. Where do the numbers match up?
I can answer that, and if he wants to jump in. So on some of these, and I forgot to mention that at the beginning, so I actually appreciate that. Like on Texas Independence Park, I have carried the higher number that we had talked about with y'all previously at that last CIP meeting. I believe it was in January. And so it will be the increase to get to that 25 million that's shown on there is part of the FY27 budget. Right now, that's not the number, but I'm kind of showing y'all the estimate on these and where we are going to be showing y'all as part of the 27 budget.
So can I just, so Texas Independence Park, right?
Yes.
So we budgeted for this budget 9.2 million.
Yes, that's what's currently in this year's budget.
Okay, so in next year's budget, we will increase that to how much?
It's 25 point something.
25, so that's like 16.
Yes, and that's the number that we talked about with y'all as part of the CIP meeting when y'all approved that list. And so that is the full project cost to do all of the things that we've talked about. So I was trying to be consistent with that, but I do understand how that's confusing a bit on that. Some of these you'll see that the budgets you'll see increases coming as part of this, for some of these, as part of the FY27 budget. Like Corporate Parkway, for example, that's not fully budgeted in this year. And so you'll see some of those increases coming as part of the FY27 budget, certainly pending y'all's approval, but those are the numbers that we're kind of estimating and working forward with as a planning number.
Yeah.
You'll obviously see all of the contracts come to you. Krenick Tap's an example that the budget on that one, I'll need to check for sure about that one. I'm not sure of that number, but it actually came in significantly under budget. I want to say when we got the bids, it was 7 or 8 million, but we're still carrying the higher number in the budget. Once the project's complete, they'll close it out in finance, and that money can be reallocated somewhere else.
So what I'm hearing is that year after year, there's going to be some adjustments in the actual overall budget. So when we actually go into a project, we know we have a budget amount, but from my knowledge, that could change year to year based off various factors.
Sure. So every year, as part of the budget, the proposed budget cycle, will come to y'all potentially with increases. Obviously, if we don't spend it all when we bring contracts to y'all, that money will be saved back. It can be reallocated somewhere else, certainly at the council's direction. So you'll see some of that. But yeah, year over year, we do see some of these projects like Rock Prairie, for example, it does continue to increase in costs. We're looking at past bid projects and we're increasing it and looking at it as we project when we're actually going to bid it out.
Yeah, and just one more example. In your presentation, you had Lincoln Avenue, that project at 12.4 million, but the budget was 8.8 million. So I'm just, once again, it's more part of me kind of educating myself when it comes to the budget process, but there's some big differences from a budget standpoint, but we will see those reflected in 2027, correct?
Yes, and sometimes you see some, like, for example, the Lincoln Center splash pad, that came as a budget amendment when we were reallocating parkland fees. So if you would have seen it last year, it would have said 0 or nothing, and then now it got reallocated during the year. So it kind of depends on what point of the year that it's coming to y'all. But you'll always see when we bring to you an item for approval, down in the budget summary, you'll see the actual budget at that point and what's available left. And like I said, if we don't use it all, if we don't use our contingency, anything you have approved, then it just stays back.
And I think Jennifer did a great job explaining that. Just one other piece. If you recall the budget amendment we did recently, a number of the things on that budget amendment were related to capital projects. As we get more information, as bids come in on projects, and we see where we're probably actually going to be, some of them may require a budget amendment. And so, again, when we did that amendment month or so ago, a big part of that was related to capital projects and getting those to where they need to be. And Jennifer's also correct. As we get into the FY27 budget, we're going to spend a fair amount of time walking through the about $167 million worth of projects that council has talked about really since last July or so, and then continued conversations through the early part of this year, and since then, and that conversation will continue as we go through the budget process. I mean, for example, the Texas Independence Ballpark is going to have an additional $16.2 million to it to get to that $25 million number.
Yes, that's right, because
Yes.
we were only budgeted 9.2 this year.
Correct.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And the other thing, if you want me to address, you were asking questions on schedule. So we're giving our best estimates on schedule for some of these that aren't under construction especially. It's really hard to project out when Union Pacific's going to make a decision or when we can get a utility to move, because sometimes if they're franchise utilities, it's a lot more difficult. So you're seeing, a lot of times it's estimates, and we'll say that. But some of them that are already under construction, like Lincoln, for example, it's gone on a lot longer than we had hoped it would. Some of it is significant rain happened. We had to change our phasing plan because the road fell apart and we had to close it. There were different components in the soil that we had to treat. So there's always things like that, and we'll try to communicate that the best we can, but unfortunately things do drag out longer at times because
I totally understand. I appreciate the explanation,
Sure.
but my question was, does it affect the contract? I mean, is there a clause in the contract that if it goes over, there's additional cost to the city?
There is. So all of our contracts have liquidated damages, a liquidated damage section in there. Sometimes it looks like a small amount and sometimes it's larger. The fire station has a much larger one because we'll have staffing sitting there ready to go versus a road that may not have as much of a monetary impact. And so we work with our attorneys to make sure that number is defensible. Part of it is if we don't approve additional time. So we will approve additional time for if they encounter something that was completely unforeseen. Maybe there's a utility in the way that wasn't on the plans correctly. Maybe the rain has just been extra for the year, right? Because we have certain numbers built in, but maybe it's rained for the whole month. Last summer was a good example of that. So if we don't approve things and they go over, because we can approve it and extend it, but if we don't approve it, then we do charge them the LDs, and there's a process for that.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there other questions, general questions or comments from council?
I'll make a comment and just bounce off everybody else. Wonderful job, and thanks for the update on the Caprock, because I get asked about once a week from someone where I work, because that's been going on forever, it feels like. So I feel like there's been good progress, I think, since last time. What you put it at 75%. So I already relayed that message to them that we've progressed along. But thank you very much for all that you do.
Sure.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Good comments. Everybody's on the mark tonight. Thank you, Ms. Kane. We appreciate the semi-annual update, and I look forward to great continuing progress. Looks like a committee is coming forward for item 8.2. Just because there's 3 staff members speaking here doesn't mean the council has to spend all that time on it, but this is one of the highlights of the evening, I know. Item 8.2, and let me just read the commentary on this. Presentation, discussion, possible action on the Greater Northgate Small Area Plan. Recommendations proposed public improvements within Northgate District and direction related to the surface parking lot and surrounding areas. Mr. Armstrong and Mr. Ostrowski and our city manager, Mr. Woods, will be leading the presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. In true city manager style, let me throw a little bit of a wet blanket on this right to begin with. I think we have lost sound to our broadcast, so I don't know if we want to take a couple of minutes and see if we can get that back up.
Maybe we should.
If we can't, then obviously we can press forward, but it might be worth taking a second. Let me see if we've got a timeline on that.
Well, let's take a 5-minute recess and get to that.
Yeah, thank you.
We're in recess only to try to get the recording stuff moving again. Apparently there's a problem there. Voice, there we go. I got a signal that the live feed on Channel 19 is back up. Apologize to those that have been waiting around trying to figure that out. So we can now proceed with our next agenda item, which is item 8.2, and I just read the lead into it, but let me read it again just before we start this discussion. Presentation, discussion, possible action on the Greater Northgate Small Area Plan, recommendations, proposed public improvements within Northgate District, and direction relating to the surface parking lot and surrounding area. City Manager Brian Woods, Anthony Armstrong, and Michael Ostrowski will lead the discussion. Let me remind everybody on the dais, this is a workshop item. It's not an item that we'll be making any final decisions on tonight, but we will be asked to give some direction. So I'll turn the floor to Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. And I will just tell everyone, while I think we have sound and hopefully will, if for some reason it gets cut off, you can get on the Teams link, and it's been working this time. But you need to have sound for somebody to be able to tell you to do that. So hopefully right now you're hearing that and we don't lose it. And again, thank you, Mayor and Council, and everyone who's here. I'm not really scheduled to speak tonight. We got other people who are gonna carry this item on, but I really, over the last couple of days and talking about some stuff, I felt like I really needed to come up here and kind of kick this off for a few reasons. So one, I'm super excited. We've had conversations about the small area plan and all the engagement that's happened before, and it's a continuation. This is a continuation of that. This is a council requested item, so most of what you're going to hear about tonight really is about what to do on a certain aspect, a lot of the architectural and character piece, and then there is a piece on the piece of property we have, and I'm going to let the folks behind me hit that, and it's going to be some of what I speak to, but I want to talk about kind of the larger thing here. Northgate is a big deal, and we've been through a lot over the last couple of years with it, and honestly, if you look back, and I think about Jeff Kirsten at this point and some of his files that he keeps, people have been working on and doing things in Northgate for a long time. And there's a good reason for that, because it's a really important part of the city of College Station. And it has tremendous opportunities and it has tremendous challenges. So I think what I want to start off by saying, and hopefully, again, this is a continuation of a lot of really good things that have happened, but also a chance to start and maybe do things in a different, better way, is kind of apologize and say that I think, especially in this room, but represented across all organizations, we have a bunch of people who really care about solving problems and creating opportunities, not just in Northgate, but in the city. And I can see now, as we go through a lot of this, how some of the ways that we've approached it as a city, as the people that in some ways are the people that have to deal with these problems, has not been the process to get us to where I think we all want to go. I think recently we've done a better job, and with a lot of help from our staff is tremendous, and from council and from people in the community. But I think it's just important to acknowledge that, to say that I can see now, after really thinking through it, through this and other stuff, that I think there's a better way. And so some of what I'm going to lead into hopefully is gonna help open that conversation. And one of the reasons I chose to speak here is because we're talking about certain things and not talking about others. And I think some of what we could do better as a city is define what are the problems or the opportunities that we're trying to get at. A lot of times we're really focused on these problems and sometimes working on them for years, and then we kind of spring solutions on the public. And I don't know that that's the best way. And we've got a lot of work that's been done with a lot of people here you're going to hear about tonight that I think is a really good way to do it. So in kind of the spirit of building consent from people in what is going to be challenges, I want to talk about what I see as what are the problems maybe we're trying to tackle, and then also here in that opportunities, right? Because it can be both. So the first one, and the one I think we're going to talk most about tonight, and there's been a lot of time is however you want to say it, keep Northgate, make Northgate what we want it to be, maintain that character, that culture, all that kind of piece that's going to be talked about. I think that is a problem from the standpoint of, as people have told me, I experienced Northgate in the heyday, or at least I think everybody thinks that. Mine was the early 2000s. And, there were maybe 7 or 10 bars. There were no high-rises that I can remember. I remember when they built the first mid-rise building, and I thought, man, that's crazy. They'll never need all those student bedrooms. I was incorrect. But, Texas A&M had half the people. It was a totally different environment. So, Northgate has changed over the years. It continues to change, and it's going to change. And that's why, if you want to call it a problem or an opportunity, trying to maintain, kind of the spirit of what Northgate is a problem or an opportunity and something we need to do. The problem, as I see it, the thing that we have a responsibility to get at is that given what I've heard from, virtually everyone, city or owners or operators or OLAGs or people is, hey, we want something there that really is Northgate. And the problem is that as it stands, current regulation and market pressure could see it completely wiped away. So we do not have, as a city, regulations in place that really would prevent anything from coming in. I think that's one of the things we're really here to talk about tonight. I'm going to let other folks talk about how people want to go about that. But I think that's really important. That's a really important thing that we need to remember is, hey, we have a responsibility to look out for this and have that conversation. The second one, which is we've talked about for years, certainly has come up recently, is the safety aspect. With all that change, we've seen a change in safety too. Yes, we have a lot more bars. We have a lot more students, people there, right? So we have seen things change over the years, and people often ask me what keeps me up at night, and the safety of people in general but certainly down in Northgate, where we have lots of people. We've seen increases in minor things like MIPs, but also serious ones, guns, drugs, assaults, gangs, serious concerns about what we would call mass casualty events, any number of ways that those things can happen. I won't lay them out. And that's not just the city. Certainly our public safety does, but some of our best partners in trying to work those out are bar owners and property owners who do a tremendous job of trying to help us with those. But that is one problem that I also know we have to get out. Now, I don't think we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. We're not planning on doing that. I think, yes, there are some things that we're going to talk about here that I think certainly could help improve that. But I think that's something that when we do need to talk about as we move forward, and certainly need to involve a lot of the same people that are going to talk tonight, but maybe in some different ways. But it is something that, especially in my role as a city manager, I feel a responsibility to address. I think people need to know that we're all worried about it, whether they work for the city or they're people who live work, own businesses down there. People are doing a lot of work, and we're going to continue to do a lot of work, and it's super important. And then finally, one of the problems or opportunities is the resources, right? We put a lot of resources down there. I think people have some ideas about how we can put other resources down there. We also gain a lot of resources from that area, right? We talk a lot about the value of that area So yes, we put a lot of resources into it. We gain a lot of resources. That is a conversation. That is a challenge. You know, a lot of times it's how much do we put in there, but it's also, well, how much are we trying to extract? Because both of those things have impacts. And definitely having talked to folks over the last few years, seeing how, hey, one thing that may seem really good for the city or for one group really has a negative impact on another. So I think that's another thing that we're going to have to talk about. But all in all, I really just want to make sure that we all continue to focus on what are the real challenges down there, and make sure that we acknowledge, one, that people have done a lot of work, a long time before I ever graced the city of College Station, and before many of us have, to negate some of the problems and to create some opportunities. And I'm really excited that we're going to talk about, to me, the first one tonight, which is how do we keep Northgate or make it what we want it to be. I think we got some great people here. Not all of them are signed up to speak, but I can tell you that they have some great ideas and things, and it's going to be, in some ways, really calling on everybody to act, because it's not something the city can just do alone. I will say I did think it was interesting. I saw some of the media coverage, and someone was quoted as saying, nobody, Northgate shouldn't really worry about it. Nobody drinks beer down there and goes and does this, that. I will tell you they do. They do. And I don't think I'm taking too hard of a stand here to say that everybody still wants to go sit down and play dominoes. Everybody wants to have, a good bar district. Everybody wants to have a place like Northgate. And that means that it's worth going through this to do it. So I don't know that I added a ton here tonight, and I don't have a great rehearsed speech, but I think this is a tremendous opportunity and a really important one. And I am very thankful that we are in this place and so many people put so much effort to get here. So I will stop unless council has everything, and let all the people who know all the things have the conversation.
Thank you. I think if we'll just go through the presentation, then council will have plenty of time to talk. So, who is Mr. Ostrowski going to lead this off?
Good evening, City Council, Mayor. Thank you, City Manager Woods, for the introduction of this item. Both Director Armstrong and myself will lead this presentation. I'll kick it off by starting and talking about the first thing as it relates to some of the improvements that we have done in Northgate, some of the proposed improvements that we plan to do in the not too distant future. Director Armstrong will come up and then talk about some of the preservation efforts that City Manager Woods had mentioned, and then I'll kind of bring it back with discussion on the surface parking lot. So first thing, City Manager Woods talked about, looking at what some of the problems are, and we've seen several problems as it relates to safety and maintenance, user experience, aesthetics within Northgate. So I'm just going to run through some of the completed improvements that we've done recently, just to give you an idea of kind of where things stand with those, and then also some of the proposed improvements that are either currently underway or ones that we're looking at doing. One of the first, in terms of safety aspects, we have large crowds that gather out on that sidewalk and adjacent to University. And it's a very significant safety concern. One of the things that we were able to do is get some temporary barricades until we have kind of a final resolution on what happens with the pedestrian wall. But we were able to put these temporary barricades in 2025. You can see this was after we put the barricades in after the Auburn game, and you can just see the hundreds of people who are on that sidewalk. And I don't know if any of you were involved as we went through the Northgate engagement report, but even as we walk through Northgate as a group walking down University, you could see people looking over their shoulders as those cars zip by when there were no barricades in that. So I think this was a great addition to the district, especially from a safety aspect. Some of the other completed improvements that we've done that are either more maintenance, aesthetics, the bathrooms have been refreshed and repainted, picnic tables have been repaired and refinished. Several of the trees, especially in the promenade area, recently trimmed. We've seen also last year we had the purple martins that roosted in the Northgate area as of today. We have not seen any come to the Northgate area. They have roosted elsewhere, but we have done a number of things within the Northgate district, including some of the tree trimmings and some of the other things to help get them probably in a better location for everybody. Another things as it relates to proposed improvements, and this really hits the gamut of all of them, from safety, maintenance, user experience, aesthetics. This is the area off of College Main in front of the garage. This is, you can see, especially on the bottom picture, there was landscape that was there. There's broken sprinkler lines. This is an area where the sidewalk kind of jogs and goes back towards the garage, and people continue walking straight, right? They don't jog with the sidewalk, they continue walking straight. So a lot of this has been trampled, and it just does not look very good. It's not safe. It's not aesthetically pleasing. Here's a few more pictures kind of what it currently looks like. So we do have under contract a design firm to look at hardscaping this area. We will add some landscape components, whether trees or maybe some planters, but this area is very heavily traveled. There is also some grade differentiation between the garage and the street, so we have that to contend with. The area that's kind of identified in red is kind of that pedestrian walkway. The area in gray is where you would probably have a slope towards the street level. But this is currently in design, so we're working with our design team to get this and then hopefully get out to bid and then bring back to council for a contract approval on that. One of the other things that has been identified for many years are the planters on the promenade area. Again, safety issue, aesthetic, maintenance, all of the gamut on that one as well. These planters get hit by vehicles who, whether they're driving down kind of where the loading area is off of Patricia, or they're driving down the fire lane adjacent to the parking lot, where they'll clip these planters and we'll see significant damage on them. Our proposed improvements looking at this, instead of doing the planters, looking at benches to allow additional seating within the Northgate area, but doing circular benches, which will pull them a little bit away from the sidewalk as well. One of the things that we will have to contend with, though, is some of the root structures within the trees. Not all of them are at grade, so they've grown in those planters where they may be up 6-8 inches, so we'll have to work through that. But right now, we are working with the design team to look at the benches installation in this location, and then again, bringing that back to council for formal contract approval moving forward with some of these improvements. One that you recently approved was, and this is more from a user experience. We've had a lot of conversation about parking in Northgate, a lot of conversation within the Northgate engagement report about just having a better user experience with the garage, people not knowing where it is, people not knowing how many parking spaces may be left. So we've recently approved a contract to upgrade the garage in terms of a better user experience with better signage, also indicating like how many spaces are left, but also we're doing a number of different things as it relates to signage within the district to get people to the garage, to get people to the surface lot. And this is also stemming from kind of the bollard situation that we have on College or Boyette. So every week our team sets bollards on Thursday. They pick them back up on Friday, and they set them back Friday night, and then they pick up back on Sunday. So one of the things that we're going to test case is trying to leave them out from Thursday to Sunday. But there are some challenges with that, right? So now you missed that Friday opportunity where we want to work with the business owners to make sure that that doesn't impact kind of the customer experience and getting people to the businesses within Northgate. So one of the things that we're looking at doing is before that takes place is that we want to install new signage throughout the area, especially along University, to get people to turn down these streets for the parking lot before they hit Boyette, and then also have a more consistent signage as it relates to parking. A number of communities have done the green parking signs. They're typically more aesthetically pleasing, more earth tone colors, but the common standard is the blue with the white P. So that's what we're going to look at going towards. It's more universal that people understand kind of what that parking is, and then also identifying specific locations where these need to be placed to get people to not only the surface lot, but also the garage. And then one of the other budget amendments that you had done, and this is more from aesthetics and then just community pride, looking at doing the Lyle Lovett, Robert Earl Keen statue. We met out there with a number of different stakeholders. This is a statue that is currently at the Foundry, is anticipated to be cast over this year, and then looking at early next year for implementation. That is intended to be located right where the Aggie Spirit statue is, and then relocating the Aggie Spirit statue to where the Northgate clock once stood. We had removed the clock. Clock was in disrepair, didn't look good. Again, another maintenance and aesthetic component. But this is another addition that we'll see within Northgate, whether it's later this year or early next year as it relates to the statue. And the intent here is that when you set this statue in the front porch, you have the backdrop of Bottle Cap Alley and the Dixie Chicken, and it's a great photo opportunity as well. So that'll be a really good addition to the Northgate, especially in the promenade area. And then finally, there's nothing specific on this in terms of like in proposal on this, but this is another idea that we're starting to take a look at. So the way that this picture was taken is this is standing under kind of the stage area looking towards Boyette. You can see the promenade area, Dixie Chicken, and the bars on the left, and then on the right-hand side, you have the shade structures, canopies there. One of the thoughts here is that trying to open up this area a little bit larger so we can look at potentially bringing more live music acts down in the Northgate area. Some of these shade structures, they're in aesthetically disrepair, where they've got rusted out on the bottoms and the roofs probably need to be replaced. Structurally, they seem to be okay. However, we may want to look at, and again, this has not been decided or anything with that, but could potentially one of these be removed, especially this closer one, or could we build a new one in this location, which is just off to the side of it, and that would allow that promenade area to open up a little bit larger so you could have additional activities within that particular area. So those are the particular improvements that have been done or in progress or in the near future. Some of the ones that we are also looking at for FY27 SLA requests, new sanitation compactors, that has been a point of contention over the years in terms of those breaking down quite frequently. So getting new sanitation compactors, improved signage within the garage. So with the new system, we need new signage for the new rates and directions on how to use the technology. The third one, and that's part of the conversation also here tonight, we do have a request in there to resurface the surface lot. It is starting to get a little bit in a maintenance issue, so we have put that in there from a resurfacing standpoint, not a completely redoing, but just resurfacing of it. And then also, as we start to really engage this effort, and one of the things that came out of the Northgate engagement report was branding, and we want to brand Northgate, and especially tying that into our tourism strategy, tying that into our economic development strategy. So those are going to be for also SLAs. There are a few others in there, but these are the applicable ones that will be in here for FY27. So before I move on and turn this over to Anthony, I do want to also say, in addition to all these things, and the city did also put funds towards creating a new position, our district manager within there, Jennifer Luna. She's done a fantastic job in kind of wrangling all this and working with the different departments and the communication with the Northgate business owners. But I also want to really thank to the Northgate District Association, Courtney, Justin, Andres, Costa. We meet monthly to talk about things that are going on within the district, the improvements that are going on, some of the challenges that we're seeing, and it has been a great opportunity to really engage with the Northgate business owners there and get some real-time information of what's going on, what are the concerns, so we can address them quickly. And then also, as we start to look at some of these projects and initiatives, having those conversations to really kind of test fit that first before we move on to any of these projects. So really want to say thank you to those individuals. They've been very instrumental in everything that we've been doing in Northgate, as well as the communication back to the other property or business owners within the district. So that's all I have for improvements. Happy to answer any questions relating to those. Anthony will step in and talk about the preservation efforts, and again, I'll be back up for the parking lot conversation, but happy to answer any questions as it relates to the improvements if you do have any.
Yeah, this is a good time to consider any questions council members may have on the topics that Michael covered. Any questions or clarification there? I see no one, but that doesn't mean that we won't be back asking those questions later. Mr. Armstrong.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks, Michael, for that introduction. So I want to start a little bit and talk about what exactly is this engagement report effort that we did. Kind of remind us how we got here today. Again, so when we started this effort, right, it was really in response. I think we had heard a lot of fear and a lot of issues around people not being heard. They wanted to feel like the city was listening to Northgate, and so we really undertook this effort and started this process. Ultimately, this process, and I've heard some stuff in the media and from some members, this was not a small area plan. So when we talk about a true small area plan, we talk about something like what we did in Southside or what we're starting off over in Harvey Road. That is a full, long, year-long process. We start with engagement. We do everything we did as part of the Northgate effort, and we take that information and we say, hey, here's what we've heard. Let's start looking at this as staff. Let's kind of run it through a gut check. Does it make sense? Is it feasible? And then we turn that into action items. We take those action items to council. We say, hey, here's what we've heard. Here's what we've come up with as your subject matter experts. Do you agree with this, and do you want us to implement it? And what that does is it gives staff a guiding document for 10, 20 years to start working towards these things. What we did with Northgate was a little different. We did more of this engagement effort, and everything that we brought forward and put in that report that we presented back to you guys in July was strictly just what we heard from the community. There was no staff involvement other than collection of their information, collection of their ideas, and we provided them some existing conditions data, as we call it, or really what is the boots on the ground, what are we seeing out there, kind of give us your take, how you would like to address this problem. And so with that, we presented that item to council back in July of 2025. We then came back in October and re-presented it. At that time, we had taken the original report. That was a written document. We took that and put it into 3 different buckets. So we had a bucket of what was in progress, kind of what is already happening, going on. So Michael basically touched on all those things. So all the things that were kind of in progress, already happening, that we've done. It could be physical improvements or just kind of contextual improvements. A big thing was certainly the district manager position. And again, Jennifer's probably red in the face back there, but she's done a fantastic job. And really a primary point, again, what we heard of this process was people didn't feel heard. And so that has been a very good conduit for the city and the staff to work directly with that Northgate Bar or the District Association and the city staff to have that direct feedback. We communicate with their department daily, almost, it feels like, with Jennifer and her team, as well as obviously she's communicating with them daily as well. And so we did a lot of those in progress things. We were working on that. We had a separate bucket of things that are on the horizon. So a lot of those were really related to what you just recently adopted as part of the active transportation plan. There was a lot of feedback around pedestrian safety, around pedestrian connections, about cross sections or potential avenues for roadway construction. A lot of those comments and ideas got baked into the feedback that we took on to adopt with the active transportation plan and things that might come out of that effort. And then finally, there was a bucket that we said council needs to give us direction on. And so when we first presented this back in July of last year, it was, hey, let's sit on this. We want to have some time to think about it, and we'll give you some feedback, bring it back to us. We brought it back again in October. We said, here's kind of where we're at. Let us know what you think. Council gave us some additional feedback, kind of at a high level, I would say, on generally what your priorities were as a group. And so a lot of that, the number one was communication, again, communicating, staying involved with the stakeholders, maintaining hardscape spaces and public spaces. Michael's touched on a lot of that already, and some forethought that we've got going on with that. And then ultimately what we're kind of here to talk about tonight is the third item, protecting, enhancement, and marketing of the unique character of the bar area or Northgate, kind of that core area that we consider. And so we had sent a memo out to council earlier this year kind of summarizing where we were on things that would still need additional direction. So I would ask you again, as council considers items and as we move forward, as city manager said, there are items that the community might want to see from that report that's still kind of in your inbox, if you will, to be working, letting staff know if you want us to pursue that or not. And so again, with this item, ultimately, we're going to talk specifically more about, I think, what the problem here is the character. So ultimately, we've got an issue where, and we talked about this really extensively when we went through the effort, and even at the end of all the 6 months we spent going through the engagement report, I would say we really didn't walk out with anyone able to define the character of Northgate. It's kind of like that Aggie saying, from the outside you can't explain it, or from the outside you can't understand it, from the inside you can't explain it. It's kind of where we really ended up, I would say, with kind of what is that character of Northgate. And so it is a hard issue that is really cultural in nature, I would say, not necessarily structure based in nature. And so ultimately, there was a push for that preservation of what that is. And so I would say, again, this is a workshop item, so this is an open conversation. Don't make me lecture the whole time, please. But this is an opportunity for feedback from council and what you've heard from constituents, but also this is an item for you to work through. Michael talked about things we've already done. This section of the item, and really what Michael's going to talk about next, those are opportunities for council to weigh in and really start providing some direction and feedback. And so I'll kind of start out with what we heard. So when we had the engagement effort, this is kind of a general idea of what we heard from the community on what we could do from a regulatory standpoint to kind of help have some level of preservation on what they were trying to preserve. And so we talked about things like height limitations was the common one, and really specifically around that core area. So that's something that we can go off and pursue. There was a conversation really on maybe 3 to 5 stories as a maximum. So right now, the Northgate has a 2-story minimum. There was a talk about a maximum. There was a lot of conversation around the types of materials being used. So if you'll remember, Northgate is a design district, and we'll touch on why that is actually very important here in a second. But Northgate is the design district, and with that we have certain material requirements. It is one of the only 2 locations in the city we can regulate the materials of buildings. One thing that the engagement report came out of that it wanted to see was more wood and more brick elements as kind of a default, more matching that kind of aesthetic that you see on what the areas we're trying to preserve. There was a lot of concern about facade changes. There is existing requirements for certain buildings in the code. So if there was something that was on the historical survey that we did in the late 80s, early 90s, if you were on that list, there's a certain steps of requirements you have to do in order to change your building materials. And if you meet those, you're good. This third item talks about, ultimately that's a staff level decision because it's in the ordinance. If you meet the ordinance, you stay at the staff level. This would be, this idea here was if you went over a certain percentage, you went over half of a change to your facade. So let's use, I'm going to use a chicken because Courtney's here and she can punch me later. But as an example, because that's one that everybody knows, let's say the chicken came in, they wanted to change 50% of one of their facades. It would require them to go to a board to make that request. And so it takes it out of the staff level approval and moves them on. That was an idea, and I'll touch on some cons on that in a second, as well as some others. And then ultimately, kind of a catch-all, if you will, is there's a lot of stuff, again, in the ordinance that if you mess with an existing facade, you mess with certain buildings, you have to meet requirements. If you demo the building, you don't. So if you demo the structure down, you could call it a loophole, but ultimately, if you demo it down to the ground, none of that applies. You're starting anew, you're raising and starting over. And so there was some thoughts and concerns on how we could address and change that. And ultimately, when we look at these items, the only one from a regulatory standpoint that we can really feasibly do is the height limitations from a high level. And I'll explain why. Ultimately, as I mentioned, Northgate's a design district, and so that allowance and kind of this historic nature we've given to Northgate allows us to continue to regulate building materials. And I say continue because back in the late 2010s, there was a state legislation that came out that said you, a municipality, can no longer regulate the materials of building at all. And that actually is fairly broad reaching. It's not just a facade of material, it goes to some things beyond that. But that concern doesn't allow us to add anything that could regulate materials. We could certainly do it, we could probably do it once, but what that does is it would degrade, we would lose our grandfathering of our Northgate district. So you'd be kind of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, if you will. If we made some sort of change to try to address a single issue, it could be almost immediately challenged, and we would lose that vesting of our existing Northgate ordinance and what we have for NG 1, 2, and 3 as far as material requirements. And so that is certainly something council can weigh. I would warn you that if you did make this one-off change, the second it is challenged, we lose all of it. So it's not, it would go away in perpetuity once we lost that.
So could we redefine the boundaries of NG 1, 2, and 3 to make NG 1 smaller and NG 2 bigger? Like, or if we touch it at all, it goes away?
But you could change the zoning district boundaries, I would say, in this regard with materials and other things. And we actually talked about that as staff. Do we just look at changing and rezoning certain areas to allow, maybe we make changes just to NG1, we keep NG2 and 3 the same, but we change those boundaries. Unfortunately, the way that the district and the preservation is, it would be everything. So if we changed NG1, we lose NG2 and 3 and those material requirements too. But even at the end of the day, we can't regulate materials, period. Going forward from today on, you can't regulate materials. I'll talk about a way around that in a second, but stick with me. But from a, we can't regulate ourselves into fixing this cultural problem with physical characteristics. And so our problem is, how do we address this cultural issue of preservation and trying to preserve this while using ordinances and our physical regulations to do so? And so that's ultimately the challenge and the problem that we're facing here. At a high level, really the main thing we can look at doing is capping heights. We can change height requirements in areas, and we'll talk about an overlay here in a second and some things you can do with that. And so from a regulatory standpoint, high level, from kind of what we would enforce as planning development, there's not a whole lot we can do from a true preservation standpoint on regulatory standpoint. Now, related to that, there is something that the city has that's called the Landmark Commission. I say has, it's been dormant for a long time ago, and Councilman Schaefer might be a little familiar with this body. Back in the early 2010s, there was an effort done where we created the Landmark Commission. It is a boarding commission. You haven't appointed to it since 2014, I believe, 2016 maybe, because there was no reason for them to exist. There was no historic preservation overlay. So what this body does, we can enact what's called a historic preservation overlay, and it puts a lot of restrictions actually on what we can do. There's something called a certificate of appropriateness. So any time that any business, any change wants to come in to an area that's under that overlay, they would have to go before this Landmark Commission and basically seek their approval on, can I alter the building? Can I change my fence? Can I do this, that, and the other? It's a very strict board on preservation, as the name would imply. It's related to stuff with the Texas Historical Commission. There's some stuff that if we resurrect this, and you can look at it yourself, there's a lot of details. It's in Article 2 of the UDO. It'll talk about the Landmark Commission and what they do. But there's a lot of components of that we could kind of beef up. But there's a certificate of appropriateness. Anytime someone wants to demo a structure in an overlay, it requires that it go to this body, and they have the final authority. It's not a staff level thing. It's not if you meet XYZ requirement thing. It's an ultimate authority. And this was generated, and the first one done was actually for Southside. And so there was a long conversation a little over 15 years ago that was led to enact one of these. And it was, anecdotally, it was kind of a bloodbath between neighbors. It turned a neighborhood of very like neighbors into kind of really mean-spirited individuals against each other because they were scared. People with private property rights is heavily infringed on that. And so this is an effort. This is a zoning category. You can add this overlay to Northgate. In a perfect world, right, you're working with all these owners. You're looking for them to have consent. You could zone a property city initiated. If you do that, it requires a supermajority of the council. So that's something to keep in mind if you go that direction or want to go that direction. But ultimately, this would be the city enforcing this overlay on them, allowing that ability, and it provides these different avenues that we would kind of have to resurrect that process. We'd have to resurrect that board. You'd have to reappoint them. We'd have to go through the Texas Historic Commission. There's a lot of things that we would have to go further investigate to make that happen. What area you want it to be over, things like that. And ultimately, that is, I would say at a high level, that's just really the city putting up additional roadblocks into how do you redevelop in this area, or being able to put up additional roadblocks to how you redevelop in this area. And so one thing that immediately sits out to me is that we also heard in the engagement report that people wanted less regulations to do things. So this doesn't just affect the new high-rise that could go in an area. This affects the Dixie Chicken too. If they want to change something to the facade, they want to add a patio, whatever, it's not a staff thing at that point. It goes to this committee, and this committee or this commission is responsible for approving and deciding if it's appropriate for the historic nature of that area. And so that is really to address the concern of what we heard. That would be the option we have as a city. A lot of it is in place. We would have to resurrect a lot of it and make sure a lot of it still passes muster. We'd probably make some updates to that and bring that back to you guys. But again, we don't have any historic preservation overlays across the city, but it is something that we could look at. Ultimately, when we look at things, what's the best case scenario to really preserve this area of Northgate or preserve this cultural aspect? And I think really where we landed is there's maybe there's some other opportunities economically. So you could look at things like 380 agreements, right? Maybe we could look at something where we partner with a business, we do facade improvement and programs, we do something where are we able to provide them something with an economic development agreement of some sort to help promote tourism? We have to show a public need, right? We need to show and tie that to a purpose, but that's an opportunity we could investigate if that's what council's wish is. How do we investigate to help support that? It could be something in a like-minded way similar to those agreements, could be something like a tax abatement. Let's say we have a specific issue where people are getting taxed out of Northgate, the existing businesses that have been there a long time, they're getting taxed out because the property values have gone up substantially. Are there opportunities there? That could be something the council could explore and what that looks like. Those two levers are a little bit more individual based, right? It's not talking about this whole area, and I'm going to show you a map here, and actually I can show you now. It's not going to be this whole overlay area like we would be talking about, or like we've talked about through this whole kind of Northgate engagement process. That's an option. And then ultimately, again, you still have to prove a public need and a public purpose out of this. But if you really wanted some level of all-out control, and there is the opportunity that council could consider buying properties that wanted to have that level of, it takes it to where, the city has full control over that particular property. If you have a bad actor in there, if you've got a bad tenant, you've got a problem child, you've got a safety concern coming out of that, obviously if we're the landlord, you have some ability there, but also too, you now control as a group, as a body, as a representation of the public, you can control that land and what's on there. And that's a very extreme example. Again, this item was requested by council to come back and you wanted to hear everything. You wanted to hear what's the low-hanging fruit. I can put up a height restriction overlay for you, call it a day, we walk away. You can go as far to the right as saying, we're just gonna buy the property, we wanna keep this and preserve it. And everything in between, there's some options there. And so ultimately, when we talk about the Landmark Commission and bringing that back, this is kind of the overlay. Again, this is what we talked about with the engagement report, kind of this area that's been identified as that core area of Northgate that we're trying to preserve. And if let's say we went forward and council decided that you wanted us to just put on a height overlay for now, really make sure that maybe height's the main characteristic that you're trying to preserve, we could put that on. It would include the surface lot. Is that a 3-story, 5-story maximum? We're looking for that kind of feedback. Well, ultimately, what this item was a request by council to hear what can we do with options. I've laid a lot before you. And I would just say, again, going back to this is what the city can do. Similar, you've heard, and we talk about the safety issue a lot. Couch has come up here and he's told you many times before that you can't police your way out of a problem. And I would say we also can't regulate ourselves out of a problem either. And so you can put on a lot of regulation into this area. You can make it really difficult. You're going to have heartburn with that from property owners who we haven't really been engaged with, to be honest. We've been engaged with business owners, we've been engaged with residents, a couple of property owners, but we haven't been able to, they haven't been forced to be brought to the table because ultimately we didn't do anything with the surface law. We kind of went forward. We've been listening to people in that area. We haven't engaged them because council hasn't directed us to go forward enough yet with an item that required us to kind of do rezoning, change property rights to them, et cetera. And so ultimately this is kind of what we've landed on, what council can look at. And again, this is what the city can do. I would say too, the best preservation that exists is for the property owners themselves to do something about it. If the property owners themselves are wanting to create some level of preservation, they're the ones that can enforce use restrictions on their own properties. They're the ones that cannot sell their properties to different uses and things like that. And so I would say it's a partnership. Again, we've gone through this thing and we've heard a lot from the community. We've heard from people on what they see here, and here's some options on what we can do as a city to help mitigate that problem. But again, ultimately what we can do is add more roadblocks. If someone wants to still do something with their property, there's only so much at the long end of the day that we can truly do with a property rights heavy state. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about what we talked about. Obviously, there's a lot here, and Michael's going to talk about the surface lot specifically, but happy to hear any input. Again, we're looking for a direction from council on This was asked for, what can we do to put regulations or do enforcement out there, and looking for that direction from y'all.
I have a good bit, I just don't know when.
Well, I think if you, right now, I think just questions that constrain to what each of the speakers have presented. If you got a clarification question about what you're really talking about here or something in that area, we will have time to talk about the larger questions after we hear the next presentation. And we'll hear from, I think, 3 citizens as well. But I'm willing to have clarification questions if you have any.
Yeah, so Anthony, on your piece only, what you just talked about, in a combination of the business owners in Northgate and the city of College Station and or this historical commission, what is the lowest common denominator from a regulatory standpoint whereby somebody wants to build a new bar or renovate an existing bar, that they have to go before someone and say, here's what we want to do, and that someone blesses it and says yay or nay?
It depends, unfortunately. So I would say it, in general, so the first question about a new bar. If a new bar comes in, that was the CUP ordinance council adopted about a year and a half ago or so, or I guess more than that now, about 2 years ago. That's the CUP ordinance. So if a new bar comes in an existing spot, they have to come before council with a CUP or a conditional use permit, sorry for the acronym. A conditional use permit, you could argue from a nomenclature standpoint, it's basically like a rezoning. It follows the exact same process of a rezoning. There's public hearings, it goes to P&Z, it goes to council for final consideration, has a recommendation from staff. The difference between that and a rezoning is it gives you an idea, it gives you a plan. They have to provide, what is the building gonna look like? Is there any site work or improvements? They would have to show you what it looks like at the end of the day. And then there's conditions council can place, but it's basically an allowance for that use to go in there. And that was the CUP ordinance we did. Slight difference with that in Northgate is that the CUP also applies. Let's say I have an existing bar. I'm going to pick on the chicken again. Let's say I want to add to it. So not remodel inside necessarily, but I want to add I want to enclose the back, or that's not even a good example. I want to add to the back porch or enclose an area or make an addition somehow. If I do that, and I increase my occupancy by more than 10%, so if I have 100 occupants I can have inside right now, I go to 111, I'm required to come back and ask for a CUP. Same process, exact same thing as a new bar. I come before council, I say, here's what I've got, here's what I'm looking to add. I'm gonna have this, my occupancy load is gonna go from 100 to 111, as an example. Would the council let me do this? And council gets that final authority, that final action. If someone is an existing bar in Northgate, and let's say, same thing, Chicken wants to remodel a restroom, replace some AC units, do whatever, that is just a staff level process. That's just permitting, like you can imagine, like it's your house, you pull a permit to do XYZ within it, make some interior changes. You could even make interior changes as long as you don't do something that increases your occupancy, which is hard to do in that scenario. All that is done at a staff level. But if I want to change, really go outward or add additional capacity, I would say that's where any request, even in today's world, requires that to come before council. But I could tear down a bar tomorrow with a demo permit, no questions asked, approved through, it's an automatic approval more or less, unless if there's an asbestos report that goes along with it. You demo the structure, I build a new structure, and it meets the Northgate requirements, regulations, and that's height limitations of none, unless outside the airport. That's the parking, the mixed use, the 2-story minimum, all that comes into play.
Overlaying between your presentation to us, and which has been great, and the city manager's words, which I very much appreciated, regarding conditional use permitting and public safety. I mean, the pictures tell a story. I mean, that's more crowded than Disney's Main Street USA, literally more crowded than that. That means it's special, it's a draw, people want to go there, but it could also be a serious public safety issue, and frankly, at times already is. That was the last council that did that conditional use permitting, not this one. Can we yank Rush Bar's operating permit now, or if something else, like the embarrassment that happened last Saturday and the dangerous situation that it created happens again, can we pull their permit?
Yeah, I would say currently we do not have that mechanism. And so, and that's several fold, and I would say the biggest thing, and yeah, that particular instance happened in an area, we were able to identify that, and I think Chief has come up to you guys before and kind of explained the biggest issue with kind of policing in that area and targeting, not targeting, but picking out the bad actors specifically is a lot of the action happens outside. They're not able to trace it back. And ultimately, we had talked about existing with the current CUP system. There is a strike system, if you will. If they have so many levels of strikes, we have the ability to pull that CUP. Unfortunately, with what we did at that time is every existing bar was grandfathered. It was a very hot topic that when we came and brought that ordinance forward to council, it wasn't an easy pass. It was a very, it was a hard conversation. There was concern. It was generated out of this need for the safety of Northgate. PD had identified this as a serious problem. We need to start addressing this. Couch had presented back to you guys probably 2.5, 3 years ago a list of different items. So we talked about short-term, medium-term, and long-term ideas that they had as a police department to help address this. We came forward with the Northgate outdoor dining box amendment. So we took out on College Main, you'll remember there used to be a bunch of gates,
Dividers,
more or less, and dividers, and those were outdoor dining areas. That was a major concern for them. So we came through, we had an ordinance on their behalf that removed that. We came through a little bit later with this UP ordinance. And really what that was, the main purpose of that was to say, hey, we're at a critical mass here. We're hitting a limit where we feel like it's already not safe. We can't take any more. We need to put some sort of ability to cap this from more opportunities coming in, and that's what created it.
But pulling a license is Texas, the licensing Alcoholic Beverage Commission, right? Aren't they?
Correct.
They're the final authority.
Yeah, and I'm not the
pulling
great,
a
I don't know
license.
how, if the city attorney's office has any thoughts there, but I'm not an expert on what that pooling mechanism is, but ultimately
But it's another
it takes
separate
a lot.
entity.
Yes, it's a separate entity, and we could pull their CO, but CO pooling of a structure takes, it's usually related to the structural integrity. So we are somewhat limited. Again, there's policing and then there's regulating, and the CO is about, is it safe to occupy that building? It's not about, are the characters in that building bad
Structurally
stewards?
safe.
Correct. It's structurally safe in that building to be present is where we can pull that CO from. How, if someone is a behavioral bad actor, that's a different mechanism through PD, and I'm not totally versed in that, but I do know that it's quite complicated and complex.
Then I guess my question would be, and I do not expect or really want an answer today because I want a well-researched answer, is how do we stop those bad actors? If it's you, city manager, picking up the phone and calling the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission, if it's Chief Couch, if it's Anthony because I could have swore in that conditional use permit thing we passed, there was like a nuclear option in there, but you're telling me that
They were grandfathered.
they're grandfathered anyway?
Correct.
Okay.
So there's 33 existing bars out there when we passed the CUP ordinance. All 33 of those were existing. And not just that user, it's the space. So again, when we talk about conditional use permits, it is a function of the land. And so it is not about the actual user. Same thing when we talked about a previous zoning request. It's not about who the end user is. It's about the actual space.
So the grandfather is if the chicken closes and the elephant opens tomorrow, or as long as it was a 6-month window or so, the conditional use
1 year,
permit,
yes.
It's granted to the incoming
It's
facility.
not granted, it's just not required. So grandfathering
Right,
literally
okay.
means they aren't even required to go through this process. It didn't exist when they opened, when they started that business.
So no questions asked.
No questions
As
asked.
long as it's some measure of continuity.
Correct.
No more, a bar can be there no matter what kind of bar it is from now and forevermore.
Correct. And it doesn't matter who the user is. As long as they don't make any changes, it is a use of that structure as permanent until they are gone for that year period of time, and we would have to make some findings with that, and that's a whole different conversation.
But that's our authority as a municipality at this
Correct.
juncture. There are other parties like TABC that have other mechanisms by which they may be able to.
And just to say, I think, going back to some of what I said, one, I think these are good conversations, and I appreciate saying, we want to get a detailed answer, because I think talking about that some tonight is good. I think one of the things we can do in trying to do this in a better way is, and I do think it would be good, again, I think I said come back and talk about maybe some of those options that are a part of this conversation. I think the crux of that issue was whether there was going to be grandfathering or not. And we've got folks in here who can, who I've certainly talked to about it. The concern was, and again, I get it, the approach seemed like, okay, we may know that there are these bad actors, and we've got bars down there that are just as much about getting those people out of there as we are. But the concern is what is this from a regulatory deal? Like, how can it be used on us? Is the city going to use it the right way? Like, I think that's like having a conversation about what we're trying to do and then how we get there is the way to go about that, versus what we did with the same intent was come and say, we need you to do this, and without a lot of conversation about, well, why and what and how do we understand it. So I think, to your point, it necessitates a bigger conversation and some very specific things to formulate like how we would do that. But the big one was not so much that we could take it away from someone as a bad actor, but that we see a lot of churn in certain bars, and that the way that it was proposed at the time, they wouldn't just be allowed to continue once one went out of business. Because of the grandfathering, they are. So there's an opportunity there for you to continue to have the same type of behavior. And again, I would just note that we have so many bar owners that we do not have any of these problems with. And I don't think anyone would want anything like this. And if they were going to, we have a great example of a bar that just changed over, and I'm so glad that it's still there and is operating and doing good things. So I think that's really the challenge is how do we do it? What are we allowed to do? But the grandfathering was the big point of contention in that discussion versus being able to actually pull them.
Less intense question. I'm surprised you didn't touch on, you've spoken to me and I think perhaps council writ large about your pop-up live music, temporary stage on the city surface lot.
One, did not prepare to speak tonight, so I was just kind of going with what I got. I got a list of things I wish I had said better, but yeah, I think that's some of the other thing we're doing is and have done, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is how do we do other things down there, and would point out again, partners down in Northgate, helping us try to bring other events, and I think we do want to see some kind of pop-up live music and things, or watch party type stuff, and we're working on what that looks like. I think that's another piece of coming back and saying, hey, can we try this, to change some of the environment and or create opportunities down there for people. I know we are seeing, and we got some of them here, more people down there eating and doing kind of other stuff than just going down there. So yeah, we are working that angle too, like just saying, what can we do? We had some folks here, we talked about the big events, Savannah Bananas and the soccer match. I know that there were some folks down there, not everyone, who that really benefited as well. So that's some of the other kind of outside of regulatory stuff that we're trying to do to help make that, that environment better. But I think on that piece about the grandfathering, I do think that's something, if we come back and talk about it, that needs to be discussed. I just think the way we go about it is more about trying to all understand what the options are and how we do it in a way that everybody understands why we're doing it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Schaefer, you have any questions here at this stage, or you want to wait?
Well, I guess I do a little bit. I appreciate the reference to the South Side thing. Anthony, you're right. I was squarely in the middle of that 15 years ago, and it became pretty crazy and unfortunate. And I think largely because of misunderstanding, but like a lot of planning situations that you know very well, a lot of people were involved in the upfront stuff, including the staff, which did an amazing job, and other people who were disengaged all the way till the very end, all of a sudden found out, and it became a real problem. So what we're doing here, I think, is a real help with that. You're being very communicative with the folks who are in Northgate, and they're involved along the way. So having said that, I'm wondering, you know, with what we've got in Southside now, at least the piece that I live in, is we have a conservation overlay. Now, it's not got much in the way of teeth, I would argue, nothing near what you were describing with a preservation overlay. So I guess my question is, without having looked around at what other cities in Texas, because Texas is its unique place, what are some other cities doing, and can we craft an overlay that is somewhere in between, that doesn't, you know, put the ultimate restrictions on people, because that is something that I think most of us are not happy with. We want to give people room to do their thing, but we also are faced with this issue of Northgate being obliterated. I mean, it's going to happen, maybe, I don't know how quickly, but we've seen it. We know enough looking around at the high rises and things that are going on there that it's coming. It's coming. So what are we going to do? It seems that we have to have some protections in place to maintain what people think of as Northgate. And if it doesn't matter, okay, but I think it does. I think it does to those of us who exist here and live here now, to do something to keep the area, the sense of place that you all are talking about here together. So I'm sorry, I'm railing now, but the idea is there something in between that we might be able to do?
Yeah, and that's my apologies. So we could do the HPO, we could also just do an overlay. So I mentioned we could just do a height overlay, right? I think that's one thing that we heard as potentially an option. It didn't limit everybody, allowed them some limitations. You've got the corner bar, for instance, that's 3 stories. So is there some opportunity to look at something like that? I think what you could also add, you can't put the material requirements in at all. We can't add material requirements into the ordinance. That part isn't available to us with an overlay. What you could add, and what we talked about, not my idea, someone else's much greater idea, was you could do something, let's say that first block, right, it was always this commercial area. You could say in that overlay that it's required to stay a commercial area. Maybe you're talking about uses at that point, so you could add an overlay that looks at restricting uses out of it. So maybe they're not able to do residential, or if they are, it's only a story or 2 or whatever that is. So I think there's some opportunities there. Again, that's still a rezoning process, so we could go with that with an overlay. It could be something similar. We called it the Northgate Preservation Overlay. This is more about that height, or we could look at use restrictions, things like that. The true NPO, or the Historic Preservation Overlay, has a lot more teeth into it, as you're familiar with. We could certainly find an in-between, and I think that's part of the conversation for y'all tonight, is what does that look like, or do you want us to go find that in-between? Ultimately, what do you want to see in that ordinance for in-between? Because what we would come from tonight, which I would say is, we're looking for what is the marching order from council to, hey, go get these property owners to the table. We want to go seek them. To your point about Southside, is, you know, our task here would be to go find these individuals and these property owners and say, hey, here's what we've done, here's what we've been doing, we want to bring you into this process early now that we're starting it, here's what this would look like, where are you at, here's what the problem we're trying to address with the cultural sensitivities and preservation we're running here, are you on board? And then we would bring that back to you guys as an actual ordinance, and so you would hear that option there, but that's what we're trying to find out tonight, I would say. But yes, those are options.
Also, I know it was mentioned earlier, but I just want to keep reiterating that we're talking a lot about what we can do as a city. The other thing we can do, which is more complex and harder, is people who own properties have the ability to restrict it of their own free will. We can also go to them, or if we get this kind of idea and we say, this is what we want as a community to be there, yes, there's what can we do regulatory wise, and that may be limited. There's what can we do to encourage things, to investment stuff. And then there's going and saying, hey, if you all want this, you know, will you do this basically on your own? And or what do we need to do it? Because maybe people are willing to enter into these things if they know that other things, hey, how are you going to use your surface lot city? What other, you know, what are you going to hold other people? Are there, you know, tax advantages or design advantages or other things that the city's willing to use as incentives to get people to willingly participate in this, and doing something that we can't maybe legally force them to do, but we could incentivize.
Okay. Ms. McElhaney, any questions here, or you want to make comments here?
I have a
or wait?
lot to say and a lot of questions, but I would like to wait to the end.
Okay,
Until I've heard
Mr.
of
White,
everybody.
do you want to ask some,
Same thing. I have a lot of questions, but I'll wait.
Mr. Wright?
I'm gonna wait. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, maybe just a couple questions here that I thought of, jotted down while while you were speaking. Do we know if there's anything within, well, first of all, I really love this idea of Core Northgate because I think it's like Scott and I specifically, and I think others have just said like we need to define what it is. So that's a great step forward. Do we know of any like current projects that like if we move forward with this preservation overlay that it would interrupt?
It depends on what those requirements are, but yes, there is a project currently happening. Hopefully this works. So there's currently a high-rise being built right there. Obviously, they're already, again, back to the grandfathering conversation, they're already under construction. They're underway. They would be able to continue as is. You're not going to be able to do anything there. The other thing I think we've seen a lot of attention on in the past is this old gas station lot. There was probably a year or two ago now. It sold for $5.2 million. Olden Goodwin had posted that. They were the broker on the deal. They had posted that on social media. That's public knowledge. That lot sold. The gas station was demolished. That sold for $5.2 million. They have obviously an intended use for that property. They're trying to do the exact same thing that's been going on around them. So there is some potential concern with, what is their willingness to participate, or what does that look like if we put some levels of restrictions on them? Does that open us up to risk is always a conversation. Outside of that, in this area we've talked about, yeah, there's not, obviously everyone's familiar with Harry's kind of reopening in the old Shiner Park. That didn't change anything, but as far as potential, things on the horizon to look out for, that's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, so they wouldn't be considered grandfather because they haven't done anything yet. We just know that they were wanting to do stuff. So we would.
Correct. And yeah, I would have to look at the city attorney's office. Maybe there's some questions on how much risk that could open us up to ultimately with if we impose something on that property. It also could be one where maybe we just do everywhere else but there, right? So you aren't able to salvage that spot, and so to reduce our risk, we go everywhere else except for that one location.
Yeah. Do we think that there would be, I would say, I'd preface by saying I'm in favor of this, but do we think there's unintended consequences that would be like, once we do this, a more of even a land grab where it's like the places around it will just fall instantly because they know that that's all, like, basically, obviously what's all is there is all that's there, but now we're really limiting what's there. And could that make rents go
You're talking
up
about
as well?
if the city bought them or if we did
No,
the
just if we
historic
said, hey,
preservation?
we would be eliminating the ability for high rises to go in this area for the most part, broad strokes. So would we see a rush towards buying everything else up before we had the ability to do it further if we chose to or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say there's 150 acres in Northgate, right? We're talking about a relatively, I think it's around 10 to 15 acres here, so about a tenth maybe or less. There's certainly other land available for a couple of spots on the backside of Northgate. I think obviously if you're not going here, the market is clearly, as City Manager Woods mentioned earlier, the market is saying this is where we want to put these things. And so there's certainly that balance council has to strike right between what is the market demanding and what is it that we're trying to keep as a city. So there are other areas they could go to. To be quite frank, there's not a ton. There's some stuff in the back. Ultimately, there's a lot of land owned by churches in Northgate, a lot of land owned by churches in Northgate. We have seen an example where there was a church out there that actually leased the property to a high-rise. They occupy the bottom floor, and there's a high-rise above them. So it doesn't mean that they're immune from that potential pressure as well. Obviously, the churches operate in their own form of internal government, maybe, and so that's got its own things there. But I'm not sure it would. Right now, we've seen market pressures for there to be there, and we have continued. We haven't seen an application for a high-rise in a good minute, I would say. We were seeing them, obviously, in a gigantic wave. We saw several. We're now up to, I think, around 19 to 21 of them through the area, almost 12,000 beds. Once all these come online, there's about 7,500 beds waiting to come online in the next 12 to 18 months in that area. And so I think you could certainly see some level of land grab for what's remaining, what's there, but it might just push pressures elsewhere across the city. It might push to different product types. You never know.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Smith, you passing for now?
For now, yes.
Okay. Couple of comments on this particular idea of an overlay or something like that. I go back to Mr. Schaefer's comments that it's really a pretty simple base question. Are you going to do something or you're not? And if you don't, I believe in markets. Let the market decide what it wants to do. If it means that the landowners collectively decide on a certain area, got a big enough acreage to combine to sell it to somebody who wants to build a high rise, they will. I like what came out of the one of, I think there's 37 strategic action items in there. The core area, going back to what existed previously, I'm talking about 25 years ago, of a 3 to 5 story height makes some sense, but you're going to penalize landowners underneath that if they're not allowed to build 25 stories. This gets me back to the city manager's commentary that when you put an overlay on like that clearly discriminates among land owners relative to those that have already made a commitment and sold their land for a high rise, that I think in order to make that work would require some kind of incentive structure that the city would have to participate in to offset that. I think it's the only way that you're going to get back to your original point about, do we want to preserve historic, cultural aspects of Northgate? And if everybody believes that high rises ain't it, then you got to take this core area. Maybe it's smaller than what you've got there, and just say from Boyette, the church, to Lodge, to University, or even a smaller area, you put that height restriction on, open up some kind of a engaging city set of relationships, 380 agreements, where they do something that we want, so we give them something that they want, that allows them to make money off of that land. I'm very hesitant to just come in and say, I'm sorry, everybody else around you can build here, but you can't build 25 stories. That, to me, it just goes against the grain of the free market. So I think you got to have some kind of incentive structure in here, and I'm open to all kinds of ideas on how to do that. But if you're not going to put a height restriction that in some subset of that area, you really, the private market will dictate, and maybe that's what people want. But I did see in that report that some kind of returning back to what we had before of a height restriction could contribute usefully, along with a bunch of other things, to kind of limiting the landscape view to keep it a little bit more coherent to what we think of as Northgate now or 20 years ago. I don't have a lot to add beyond that. You've got a church property included in that down there by Patricia and Lodge. I don't know whether you can actually impose a restriction on something that's owned by a church, but I'll leave you to figure that out. I'm pretty open-minded at this point, but I think you've got to do something if we're going to actually honor that, one of those major strategic discussions in there about the history and culture of Northgate. A lot of what Michael talked about, I think, very positive ideas, working on aesthetics, working around the margin some, but investment in the dirt, that really it goes back to the landowner, not just the current business operators. So you really got to get, some of the current business operators are landowners, but a lot of them are not. And a lot of the landowners are passive. They don't get involved in the discussion until you take some property rights away from them, and then you will hear from them. And I've had some conversations with a few of them, but I don't know exactly where they stand. Anyway, on that part of it, that's the overlay. If you're saying an overlay could be done, I'd like to look at it in a little more detail. And I'd particularly like to see what the incentives would be. If we're talking on the overlay of reducing height, to limiting the height restriction. And you would have to grandfather, to me, you'd have to grandfather the high rises that are already built in that area. You couldn't deal with that any other way, and I don't know how you deal with one that's planned but not built. Actually, yeah, one of those in there. Anyway, I think maybe we can move on.
We can move on, and then we can always come back. I
Yeah,
know some people
yeah.
wanted to reserve some
Michael, you
comments
had
until.
another,
So
the
is
end.
are we supposed to be commenting now, or can
Well,
we
no,
wait
no,
until we
Michael-
hear? I
Michael's
mean, I
gonna-
feel like you kind of went off to the finish line.
Michael's going to come back. No, I was just
Oh,
commenting
we've
on
got
this
some people that
particular
have signed up.
piece.
Okay.
I was commenting on this particular piece. If you want to comment on this particular piece, that's all I was doing.
I was just making sure the train wasn't leaving the
Your
station.
train's not leaving the station.
I stay here
Come back.
24/7.
Everybody-
I'll come back.
Everybody has opportunity. I'm quite sure that you will get your last word in. I'll make sure you do.
All right, so kind of the last part of this conversation before we're having kind of more in-depth discussions, but the Northgate surface lot. So just to give you a little bit of information about it, it's about 1.5 acres in size, a little bit bigger. It's got about 100 parking spaces. It generates about $500,000 a year in revenue, and while that's important, from a city operational standpoint, I think the bigger part of that is that the way the Northgate Fund operates is that revenue goes back into the Northgate Fund for improvements and costs related to the Northgate District. So that is, in looking at parking revenue within the Northgate District, that's probably about a quarter to a third of the parking revenue that is generated within that district. This area also serves as a rideshare location, the parking lot and sometimes the fire lane, but that's a very important factor too. As people come to Northgate, many of them do take ride shares, right? And we encourage that. That's a good thing that's happening. So you want to ensure that you have the ability to keep that option, as well as business loading location. Many of these businesses take deliveries from the back, and this area does serve as a vital component to that as well. And so as we look at the surface lot, and you can see the verbiage on the top of the image, it says stop sharing, but essentially that came out of the engagement report, and that it said look at, maybe a variety of uses or potential uses that you could have within this area. Potential uses could include a community gathering area, a flexible event space, a pocket park, public parking, low-profile mixed-use development that complements the scale and character of adjacent buildings. So that came out of the engagement report as we went through the greater Northgate effort. And so as we look at this, and I think the other thing that is really important is that this parking does serve a very vital importance to many of the businesses within Northgate, and also more so as it relates to what I'll call teaser parking. And what I mean by that is that when people come into the Northgate, they see it, right? And they see parking. And then all of a sudden, you know what? If the lot is full, well, there's the garage. Now I can go to the garage. And a really good example of that is Century Square. So when you're driving down Century or University, you see the parking in front. You go in there, it's full. You make your way back to the garage. Sometimes when you just have a garage, it becomes a little bit of a challenge, and it can be difficult to find that parking without adequate signage, and some of the businesses can struggle. And you can look at North Point Crossing on the corner of University in Texas. It's very difficult to find that parking garage. There is free public parking for the commercial uses that are in there, but there's not good signage. It's difficult to find, and what we have seen is that location has struggled from a commercial standpoint, and you've seen the requests come back to you to turn more of that commercial space into residential space because it's easier to fill with residential. So having a set of that teaser parking to kind of pull people into the direction where the other larger parking area is really important. So as we look at this, some of the potential direction, we could say maintain the parking as is. We're not going to really do anything different. We're going to keep the surface lot. You can make the improvements as needed. As I had mentioned, one of the SLA requests is to resurface it, maybe do some other cosmetic, aesthetic improvements around it that we have been doing. We could explore looking at the city redeveloping the space into more of a community gathering space, a plaza, event space, anything like that as it relates to that. keeping in mind, when you do that, it may limit kind of what parking can occur there, and then also what happens from a revenue standpoint if that area does go away. One of the third options that you could look at is explore the sale or lease of the property for a private sector development that meets certain development standards. So we have been down this road before, and this is one of the things that really drew this conversation up is when the city went previously, there were certain standards in the request for bid, and there are certain ways that a city can sell property. One, it can put it out for a public auction, where the city then has to take the highest bid. They could put it out with a broker, where then you have to take the highest cash offer. Or you could do a request for public bid like we did last time, where you can establish parameters within your RFP document and saying, we would like this type of development, this is how we're going to rank these proposals that come in, and then it's ultimately up to the city to determine what is the best value for the taxpayers. Not necessarily what is the highest offer that the city receives from a cash standpoint, but really what is the best value. And one of the things that you could take a look at here is that if there are certain parameters that you would like to see in something like this. For example, when we did this previously, a lot of the concerns came back and said, we don't want a 20-story building there. That's too tall, right? We don't want additional student housing. We want a different type of use that maybe activates Northgate in a very different way. You could put those parameters within the request for bid and saying, hey, we want a hotel on this site. We want a grocery store. We want to keep an X number of parking spaces that are a part of the surface lot. You could put those parameters in there as part of the submittal process, and then you ultimately would review the proposals that come in, but those proposals would then need to meet those parameters that you've established. And then ultimately the way that you ensure that happens is going through a development agreement and or deed restrictions before the sale of the property to ensure that moves forward in that direction. Alternatives, you could look at a combination of the above options. Maybe you don't want to sell or lease the entire property. You only want to sell, let's say, half of it. Or you could look at some other unidentified options that we have here. But in general, these are the types of options that are before you that could be considered as we take a look at this. And ultimately, we're not recommending any of these at this point. This is really an opportunity for discussion and kind of what do you want to see, what problem are we trying to solve within this particular area? How does this affect all of the other business owners and stakeholders within this district? Tourism has been talked about a lot too, as Northgate is a very big tourism draw. How do we, maybe expand those opportunities and bring those other types of uses that maybe bring individuals there more towards the 8 in the morning to 5 at night versus just the 10 to 2 a.m. time frame within the area. So those are kind of some of the options that we're putting out there. Again, not recommending any, but really wanting to get council's feedback, council's direction. Is it something that you want us to go back, talk with stakeholders, flesh out further, but any guidance that you could provide as it relates to any of those, if we want to move forward at all with anything different on the surface lot, that's what we'd be looking at for this evening. Again, this was requested back by council, and it was one of the items that was identified in the engagement report as well.
Okay, I do have 3 people that want to speak to us. It's not a public hearing, but I will in a minute get to those individuals. However, I think maybe one more opportunity to ask questions, provide specific comments on this particular piece, and then we'll hear from the 3 people, and then we can have a broader discussion if you want. Let me just start with Mr. Smith down there. If you have nothing, okay, Mr. Wright.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't remember if it was addressed or not, but regardless of what we do, we still need likely a substation of sorts down there for police, correct? We haven't really addressed that as much as we addressed it last time. Is that obviously still a concern?
Yeah, I mean, I think there a public safety present. I mean, some of the things, obviously, we're just kind of talking in generalities, but we still think there needs to be improved restroom facilities down there, and yeah, a public safety substation or something. And quite honestly, even if we weren't seeing some of the public safety challenges and things that we're really concerned about, I think having something down there is something we definitely want to look at.
Yeah, okay.
And one of the things with the public safety and the substation, you know, one of the ideas that we're also kicking around is, can we locate them within the parking garage as well? So next to the Northgate District Enforcement Office, on the first floor of the parking garage, could you add an office adjacent to that? It's going to take up a few stalls, but then you would have both of those teams within the same location.
We think that's possible.
It could be, yeah.
Mr. White? McElhaney?
Still waiting.
Anything further at this point?
It's too hard to structure. I
Okay.
think we just need to say what's on our mind at the end.
Okay, that's fine, that's fine. Any
I
comment?
don't have any questions. I have ideas about what I'd like to see, so I'm ready to wait and talk about that.
Okay, very good. I think then the best thing to do is hear from those that wish to speak to us. I have 3 people signed up. They're back here, I believe. Justin Manning, you want to come up first, and Costa, you'll be second. Costa Delis, and then Lance Richards. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. I'm Justin Manning, Rough Draft Whiskey Bar. The draft was spelt incorrectly up here. It's okay. I'm holding against anybody. And a member of the Northgate District Association. I just wanted to start off by saying thank you very much. From where we were a year and a half ago, the climate of everything to where we are now is night and day. Y'all are listening. Y'all are putting forward resources, and we as a group cannot be more thankful. Getting Jennifer, she has been fantastic, and Michael, getting to meet every month. We really do feel that we have a direct line now, and we're being heard, and that is huge for us. From, like I said, you know, perception's reality, and where it was a year and a half ago, everyone was so angry, and everybody may have been confused about what was happening, maybe not, but like Councilman Yancey said, I felt like we were building the plane while we're flying it, and y'all stopped the sale of the lot, and we took a step back, and like we're discussing tonight, we still don't know what it could be. And I just wanted to say on behalf of all of us, we really appreciate that y'all are taking the time and the effort to listen and try to get a really strong plan before making a plan to move forward with something so large that affects the community and the history of our town. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, can I ask a question?
Yeah, please, yeah.
May
Come on back, yeah.
Running away.
I'm just curious, as an association, Northgate Association, did y'all ever talk about, or have you ever talked about this landmark commission that the city has? Did that ever come up in y'all's conversations with any of the staff?
Not that I remember. Nope.
Okay.
Not yet.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that,
You sure?
that was his question. That
I'm
was
just
his
curious.
question.
I mean,
I love questions.
It's something that.
It's a very easy question, straightforward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a straightforward question. I learned about it tonight. I think it's something that, you know, would love to get y'all's opinion on it. I know we're talking about a preservation overlay. I don't know if they're, you know, related or there's a
Well, I mean, I
correlation
think so.
between.
You know, I grew up in the South Side District with old Scotty Boy over there, and seeing what the changes have happened in that area and the fear of, you know, I mean, there's already a couple of houses there, and having some kind of protection overlay for that and the original downtown of College Station, I think go hand in hand. So I definitely am in huge support of something like that.
So the idea of an overlay makes sense to you, but obviously the proof is in the pudding. What is that overlay? And
Yeah,
we don't
what
know.
exactly that
Yeah,
looks like in
exactly.
the end, you know, the idea is great, but, you know, once it gets granular, yeah.
Mayor,
Yeah, you have a question? Come back. We got another question.
Mr. Manning.
Oh, we have another question.
All right. Yes, sir.
How you doing, Mr. Manning?
I'm doing great, Mr.
Did you hear anything in tonight's presentation that gave you pause or concern? Ooh, I hope they don't do that.
Oh, of course.
You did?
Yeah. I mean, there was a lot said But yeah, I mean, there's a couple of things, some ideas, some of that far right stuff where the city can buy it and the city can regulate what's going on in Northgate. Like, so that's one thing. Like what you were saying about the height requirements. Well, everybody else got to do it, but maybe it's not okay if we do it now. There's a lot of things that are kind of worrisome that, things kind of seem like a good idea, but when you really get down to it, the oversight, I mean, when we saw with the CUP permitting, that gave us great pause that we had the right to do it. Now, of course, you got 180 days, and now you're saying a year to continue that. So that's something great that if something goes out of business, it can still be a bar as long as somebody comes in time. So, there's some parameters around that are helpful so we can continue to be a bar district and entertainment district. But there's definitely some things that have been said that, always make you kind of worry. But there's, I would say, not as much as there was. Now I definitely feel more positive about what I've heard tonight. Definitely a lot of things that Brian said and these gentlemen behind me have said that are, it's definitely a lot of our own thoughts are coming out, and it's all coming to light what some of our worries are and things like that. So, there's definitely some things in there that I definitely have more questions about.
Any things you saw that you immediately, yes, if you could wave your magic wand, we'd get on it tomorrow and do it, prioritize it now?
Talking about the parking part of it, the teaser parking, I really liked hearing that there's definitely some more infrastructure and ideas going on with the parking specifically. Definitely the outline of whatever Northgate proper is, that there's going to be some kind of a overlay on that area to try to lean in on that, to keep that historic area the way it is. I definitely like hearing that. There's a couple things Anthony said that I can't think of now that I'm on the spot and I didn't write it down. But there's definitely some things he said too that I definitely like. There's definitely some, it wasn't all head shaking in the back. It was definitely some, oh yeah. We like where that's going.
Any worries about pop-up events on the city surface lot? And maybe some signage to steer people to the garage and try to feature the garage more and use that lot for something besides parking?
Yeah, I think we like all those ideas. Anything that can bring more activity and more focus down to the entertainment district, I think is definitely great.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manning, and perhaps Mayor would entertain the notion of allowing the other speakers to answer those three questions after their time is done.
Yeah,
Mayor? I had one
Mr.
question.
Smith?
Does do the public safety issues that have been described, are those of concern to you and to the association?
Of course.
Do you all have ideas about how those issues should be addressed or solved?
Nothing that we would have a formal statement on, I would say at the moment. I think there's always going to be some bad actors. There was a place called Shrewsbury, Missouri, recently that had a 350-person fight and 8 different simultaneous things that happened in a trampoline park in a nowhere town in Missouri. I mean, things like this happen. I mean, it's not the norm where there's some massive fight, but things do happen. And I think living in fear and trying to overregulate something to prevent that from happening, I think is a little aggressive. There's definitely going to be altercations. There's fights at carnivals. There's fights everywhere. So we definitely are concerned about fighting, but I mean, you look at a few of the other bars like Dudley's and Rough Draft. I mean, my partner, Rusty, that's been running Dudley's for 20 years, has never had a brawl, not one, not even anything close like that. He goes, I can't even remember the last time there was an altercation in the bar. So I definitely think it's more of a one-off, hopefully. But, I mean, you got these small town people that come in and they just want to find something to do. And if that's not at Northgate, it's not going to stop it. It's just going to go somewhere else, and not condoning any of that and saying, well, this is what it is. But I definitely think there's some safety measures that could go in to that to help prevent it. But yeah, we're all we want it to be safe. I mean, I bring my family there, not
It
obviously.
is a concern. So, I mean, and like what the example, the carnival, they have to, their permit, they have to pay for additional security because of the anticipated problem. Is that something that the business association would be willing to entertain?
Absolutely. We've already discussed this about a year ago, creating some kind of a group, our Northgate group, where everyone pays dues, and part of those dues go to some type of security so it's just not all on the CSPD or the CSTAT group. So we are trying to regulate that as well, because we definitely care, because we don't want that either. So we're definitely all in favor of that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I just want to step in real quick here because I just want to keep you up here as long as possible.
I
You're
know.
doing a great job. I think one of the things, and again, I think this bears a bigger conversation. One of the things is the people that are going to get up here and talk, not just tonight, but I would say even when there was a lot of people who were really more upset, are not the ones that are causing or normally experiencing this problem, which is actually where I think some of the disconnect between what you hear us say and what you hear them say is. Like, I'm not going to quote the stats, but if I have PD in here, and we will at some point, they can tell you, I don't have problems with those bars. I'm not going to name them, but a bunch of them are sitting in here. We don't have problems with those people. If we're getting called to assist, but they're normally handling it. So I think there is a little bit of a tale of two cities inside of this district, and I think that's one of the things that I certainly heard when there was conflict last time is we're like, man, we got to deal with these issues, and they're real issues. And you got other people who are like, hey, we're handling our issues. And so I think that's the challenge is like, how do we do it in a way that we eliminate those problems when a lot of the people who are really engaged, we don't have any of these issues with. They're not overcrowding their bars. They're not serving minors. We're not seeing fights like this other than just like what you would see in any bar or, and we see a lot in carnivals, by the way. We get a lot of phone calls about carnivals. But I think that's an important thing to just keep hitting is most of the people who are really engaged as far as property owners, bar owners, restaurant owners, these are not the people we're talking about. We don't have issues with them. I appreciate that they're willing to even go beyond that, but honestly, they're staffing their security right. Nobody's perfect, but they're doing the right thing. Our problem is a lot of times stuff that's happening other places flowing out into the street or coming in proximity to the people that are doing it. If we didn't have people actively out there doing a really good job, we'd be in a completely different scenario.
Okay, let's move on to the next speaker.
Are you
Thank
sure?
you very much. I think we're done at the moment.
All
That
right.
doesn't mean you can't come back.
Just in the I'll be in the back if you need me.
Don't leave the building.
All right, I'll be in the back.
Costa Delis, while he's coming up, I want to congratulate you. I've read today another restaurant concept that you and your brother and Peter Madden are
Yes, sir.
planning to open down in Caprock. We look forward to seeing that.
Thank you. I
Seeing it
appreciate
develop.
that. And I appreciate you, Mayor and Council and staff. And it's already been said, but I'm going to say it again. The thank you is just so big. I've been in Northgate. I guess now I'm the old man operator in Northgate. I've been there for 35 years, so my entire adult life, and we just never had this level of engagement. And so it has been great. Staff has been great. I know them on by first name. I could name names, but they've been named. So I'll just move on a little bit. I had to pivot a little bit because I wrote a lot of different things, but on this TABC issue, they have a methodology in place. They have a punishment schedule in the Alcoholic Beverage Code. They're in charge of enforcement of this kind of thing. And so it's important to remember that you can report to the lieutenant in Waco, you can file a complaint online, you can call the headquarters on Mesa Drive in Austin, and that's what they do. And so what I saw, and I'm not a TBC agent, but what I saw, it would be a breach of the peace or an aggravated breach of the peace, and there's another thing that they have called place and manner, and those are the kind of charges that would come from something like that. I mean, I wasn't there, but so I would encourage that rather than regulation internally in the city. Pivoting to the parking lot, we have a position as the NDA on it. The first thing I would say is don't discount the impact of rideshare with safety. We didn't used to have rideshare. I don't know any statistics, but you have to believe that there's less DWIs because of rideshare. You have to believe that kids are safer because of rideshare. And so that parking lot, it really, I can't think of an alternative area for rideshare that's proximate to the core of Northgate. And so that's a very important component before we even talk about what we're going to do with parking or redevelopment or anything. What are we going to do with the rideshare? I mean, that's a safety issue. And so I wanted to bring attention to that. But then on our official position, we'd like the parking lot to stay as it is. And I'm going to say why we think that. Yes, the teaser parking is important to our businesses, and that's obvious. I think the rideshare safety is important, but I think implementing a dynamic and strategic pricing structure is important too, because I think the city's left a lot of money on the table over the years, not charging enough money in times of demand on the parking lot. It's remarkably cheap. You know, on a game day, or maybe not even a game day, but just, you know, busy Friday night, something like that. I've parked there many times myself, and I'm just like, it's $3? What? And so that's the convenient parking. That, to me, and I don't want to pay more for parking myself as a citizen. Am I still on? Oh, I'm not advocating for, overcharging people, but I think a lot of money's been left on the table. And I think there's software out there, I know there is, and I know that everybody's working on a parking system that can help with that and not leave that money on the table. And I think you can see more revenue from that. The last thing I'll say, I serve on the tourism committee. I had a meeting just yesterday. Councilman Schaefer was there. Courtney does as well. And I saw something remarkable. I saw a statistic. So the top 5 dining places for visitors to Veterans Park, in that top 5 is Dixie Chicken. And I thought that was remarkable, and I'll say why. Because it wasn't Gringos. None of my restaurants were on there. It was very busy drive-through brands like Cane's and Starbucks, and then you got Dixie Chicken. I think that's extremely telling that people who visit this town and go to Veterans Park and then they make a point of going to the chicken, that's big. I mean, that's a big deal. And those metrics came from the city. So I just wanted to point that out. I won't take as many questions as Justin.
No, there will be questions. Mr. Schaefer has got his finger up there.
So, Mr. Costa, thanks.
Yes, sir.
You were Cafe Excel, right?
Yes.
So I was going to ask you about briefly sort of how you felt about that, the evolution there. I mean, I used to be an Excel customer and was there, and it was the first city hall. It had a plaque, everything. And I know, the economics kind of took over. As I recall, I think maybe I talked to you about it. Maybe it was your brother, I don't remember, but you all had thought maybe there would be something done with that redevelopment that would keep something in the ground floor of the new building there that would, I don't know if it was going to be Excel or a restaurant like it or what, but it didn't happen. And I don't know if you have anything to share on that, because that seems sort of like where we are in some ways. It relates to what we're talking about. If we were to do things in this overlay that allowed buildings to go up some even, could we keep things in the bottom? What are the difficulties with that? Does what I'm saying make sense, or can you react to it? Or
yeah, I can react to it. So I suppose we didn't have a lot of confidence. The bottom line is, when we knew we were going to lose the surface parking, that our customers, our clientele would still keep coming. It would be too inconvenient for them. Let's call the median age 47.2 years old, and they worked at A&M. And we just didn't think it would pencil. That answers that part. The other part is, if we're going to attract a more varied demographic down there, I mean, I think you have to ask yourselves what would take you to Northgate. What situation would bring you down there? Do you avoid Northgate because you think it's all kids, like a lot of locals do? And so, so going forward, I would ask myself that question: is, how would I like to park down there? Would I like to see some teaser parking and then take that second option, just like Century Square or City Center in Houston, or you name it? So that's my answer, or at least my reaction to what you said.
Thank you. I'd kind of forgotten about the surface parking situation that you lost, yeah. So, thanks.
What did,
Go ahead, Bob.
thank you. What did you hear that gave you pause tonight from staff's presentation? What did you hear that you liked that you hope we move forward and do real quick? Those two, and then I got your answer on the lot. Answer me this, in that picture that we had in our presentation earlier where it is literally shoulder to shoulder, just feet to feet. I mean, there's 3 people in a square yard. Why are they squeezing in there when the entertainment end of Northgate is behind your restaurant? Why are they squeezing through there? Where are they going?
So that end of Northgate, that west end, is also busy. And if you look at the alcohol sales, it's my job to look at them. It's the business I'm in. Actually, Chimmy's is number 1 in alcohol sales in Northgate, and they also have their own dedicated parking. And so we see how that functions. People will park there and they'll start there, and I think that gives them a competitive advantage. And so, but they're usually number 1. And so I think it starts there, and then it has a synergistic effect going on down. And then core Northgate's always going to be, or I'll call it the nucleus of Northgate, like the chicken and backyard right where we are. That's more of, I'll call that historic Northgate, and then the Chimney side is newer Northgate. But they're busy down there. And so
they're transitioning to that area, to College Main area.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, they'll traverse the whole, they're bar hopping.
So that frame that we saw right there, it's that way, wrapped all the way around, going.
At times, that's extreme, and there are some extreme times like that over the course of the year. I mean, I'll say that I've seen that 15 times a year.
Has your association ever talked about limiting converting more of the roads besides College Main, or portions of them, to pedestrian only?
We've discussed those things. Our apprehensions come from not knowing what the future is going to hold, and so we kind of wait on what the city wants to do, and then we kind of react because we're not city planners, and from our point of view, if we don't know what to do, then we do nothing. But from a safety point of view, obviously, the other part of it is accessibility, wayfinding. How do people find the garage? If we cut off every single inlet into core Northgate, it's a bit confusing, and so it's just gotten so dense. And so, I think it would need to be handled with kid gloves. I think a lot of parties got to come together and figure out how we're going to get people moving from Texas Avenue into core Northgate. If we're going to start closing streets, it's going to be a challenge.
Thank you.
If you look at it kind of like an H, that part is just the long part of the H. There's nowhere to walk. The other parts of Northgate, you can walk in the front and the back and down the side, so it just kind of gets
This is so true. It does bottleneck, and you're seeing it post-barrier. It used to not have the barriers there, and that sidewalk has a slope, and that was real scary. We've taken a big step forward with those barriers because it was much scarier before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I have one more speaker, unless there's some burning questions for Costa. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't leave, though. There'll be more questions later, maybe. I have Lance Richards. And then we'll come back to the council to have their own discussion.
Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Lance Richards. I'm kind of the newer senior pastor at A&M United Methodist Church. Been there about a year now. Mm-hmm. And my interest tonight is about the development of our property. We've got a large parcel that's bounded by Church Street and Cross Street and College Main and Tauber. And the ability to build up is going to be really important for that development, especially as we have about 12,000 beds coming online at some point to be able to serve the growing community there. It's going to be essential that we're able to build significantly on that spot. Our Christian Life Center's in that proposed Northgate historic overlay. We're good there, but just thinking about that back lot is going to be really important. We also want to be a core part of the culture of what's developing there in Northgate, to be a good partner. We have a weekday school that needs, we think in terms of safety and traffic, right? Because all of our people park in that big parking lot and have to walk across Church Street to get to our facilities. And as traffic increases, there's concerns about safety during the day, getting people across that street. And also security at night is also a growing concern. We've observed as the density increases in that area, we see a more transient population coming through. And those folks are around during the day as well as at night. So we're kind of observing. We're also seeing food insecurity. We opened a food pantry to address that. We see about 100 students a week, and that's growing. So just kind of thinking as that neighborhood continues to develop and to get more dense, we're looking kind of holistically at what's going on around us and just wanting to make sure we're being strategic and intentional.
I assume you're engaged with our Northgate people, the staff.
I think I will be moving forward.
If not, I hope you do. I think the churches have been, to my knowledge, active spokespersons in some of the discussions there. So I hope that your concerns will be included in those discussions with Anthony and Michael's staff and so Jennifer and so forth. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Any questions for the gentleman? No, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Okay. It's all laid out there for you, folks. I could give you my 2 cents worth, but hey, I'm not going to speak till the end. So I'm going to let Miss McElhaney have the floor.
I feel like you're afraid of what I'm going to say.
No. I want to get back to you.
Oh, well, thank
because
you.
it's clear that, you always have valuable input, so I'll just let you start.
First of all, I've really thought a lot about this, as you guys have, and I very much appreciate, like you do, the dialogue that has developed over the last year. When I took my seat on council, that was immediately right in the middle of what are we going to do with the surface lot, and obviously came in with a very strong opinion and learned a lot of information that tempered that opinion, didn't change it, and I'm very thankful too that we did take the step back. I do think that my understanding of a lot of elements of Northgate has evolved over the last year and a half, and some even in the last week. We have heard our police department stand up and tell us that there's a problem on multiple occasions, and I won't say we haven't listened, but we haven't put that on as priority. And I want to apologize for that, because our first responsibility to our citizens is to ensure their safety. And that's not just our citizens, that's our police force and the tourists that we're hoping to attract down into the Northgate district. I also apologize because my perception of Northgate has been heavily colored by the extensive amount of time I spent there in the 90s, and it's not the same. That doesn't mean it's not awesome. It doesn't mean it can't be more awesome, but it's not the same. The extent of my current experience is going for a burger with the chicken after church on Sundays with my 8-year-old. So very different environment. The idea that things are going to stay the same is ludicrous. As much as we may want them to, I can even see that evolution since 1994. And the city only has so many tools in its toolbox to implement and advocate and monitor change. And ultimately, I think that that's going to have to be a function of what do the landowners want in this area. From my perspective, remembering that I come from a design background, and I think that there's an opportunity for the business owners and the landowners to come together with the city and come up with a workable district dynamic that works for everyone. I think that the landowners can capitalize on the extra value in their land. I think that ultimately to do this, you're going to have to work with a developer. I think that it's incredibly possible that you can embrace the structures that are there. This is different, but something that is worth saying. The Chicken Oil Company, y'all had a horrendous fire there, and I don't know if you guys have been back. They did a phenomenal job of not only maintaining the ethos of the original restaurant, but now you can actually walk on a ADA compliant ramp to get from one end of the restaurant or the other. I mean, change is not always bad. I think you can embrace the pieces that we love, that we know make Northgate Northgate, and still embrace change. I think the more that the business owners and the landowners unite and come together with that vision, and I think the city can help you develop that vision. I think it's something that they, as a cooperative, can do. I agree that the core Northgate, those bars that run right along University Drive, those are the ones that are iconic. Those are the ones that I remember. Those are the ones that I am so thankful social media wasn't around when I was there in the 90s. I probably wouldn't be sitting here right now. But we need to embrace the pieces that work and look to the future so that everybody can benefit, and that you guys know what it is. You guys live it every single day. You know what brings people back. But the thing that I'm scared of is that we're trying to attract people into a district right now that's really not safe. And I have a friend that moved here from East Texas. I went to high school with her, and she's single, and so she's in a different point in life than I am. But I was just talking to her about it yesterday, and she said that she moved here last month, so this is new information. She'd been warned not to go to Northgate after dark because it's not safe. And it never occurred to me that would be a warning that we would have to really heed. I do think as a city, we need to really focus on the pedestrian safety. I know we put the barriers up. I know we have talked about pursuing, as part of our legislative engagement, trying to make this grade-separated plaza out over the University Drive stretch between Northgate and campus. An opportunity to execute that type of infrastructure would give a whole world of possibilities. If you could have just an open plaza in front and University went down below. There's a lot to think about, but I think the far right examples of what the city could do to impact Northgate, those are the ones that would work. Okay, I'm not advocating that we do that, but those are the ones that would work. If the city just took control of it, bought it, did what it needed to do to execute some vision, that it would never be as good as if the one that you guys would come up with your landowners. So I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's going to be not just sitting around waiting for something to happen. Because like you said, if you're just waiting for someone to tell you what to do, so nothing's going to happen. I think that taking your organization further, sitting down with Michael, sitting down with the landowners, possibly talking about a developer to try to look at this area holistically. I think you could go up and still preserve up and back. But I think the ultimate best vision would come from private interest, you being those private interests driving the conversation forward, with the city helping in any way they can. I do agree that we could put forth economic incentives and even use the surface lot as a resource in that conversation. But I think it's one that needs to be held holistically, and you've got to have the business owners in line, because aside from taking control of it, it's just patches, it's just Band-Aids.
Mr. Yancey?
Thank you, Mayor. So going all the way back to when I worked in the city in early 90s, we've been talking about Northgate. And I just now, through this exercise with the small area plan, great job, Anthony, really kind of dived in from an urban planning perspective. And I learned that there's a name for what Northgate is. It's an organic entertainment zone. And they are of tremendous value and a source of great confusion for urban planners and city personnel and governments, because it's hard to get your mind around what about this area became so organically special, and they can't explain it. It just is what it is. There's Soho in London, Golden Guy in Tokyo, Rainey Street in Austin, and featured prominently in the list is our Northgate. So we just have something here of tremendous value and historical importance. Another interesting thing about organic entertainment zones is they don't change all that much over the years. It's so special and so revered that ultimately that organic will of the people wins, and it stays for the most part in its current form throughout the years. So there's that. In organic entertainment zones, some of the things that did make them better was they didn't do things permanent to change them. They did tests, temporary seating areas, temporary stages, pop-up parks, pop-up festivals, pop-up music events. And these governments and municipalities and townships, they figured out that, well, that didn't work, but this did. That didn't work, but this did. And over time, it evolved and it became even better. Safety, improvements, and entertainment. I agree with my esteemed colleague McElhaney. Safety's got to be the #1 priority. I called Judge Spillane. I was shocked, or emailed him rather. I was shocked to hear him tell me MIP is sharply down. Those types of deals that the municipal court is dealing with are sharply down in Northgate. That didn't make sense to me, because maybe compared to its elevated numbers in the past, but he said it's sharply down. And I look at that in the prism of what happened Saturday night, which made my blood boil. And I want something done about to ensure it doesn't happen again. But he indicated that it was down. The police substation. A development of the city surface lot is not a predicate to a police substation. There's any number of places. Clinton Oldham's got a student tower going up right across the street. I've spoken to him about the possibility of leasing or doing some sort of agreement with the city for space. He's all about it. He's very excited about it, and that looks right down Northgate proper, and it would be a visible, hopefully deterrent for the bad actors that are down there. Improvements, planners, yes, yes, yes. The statue, yes. Steve Beachy and the secret that he has unlocked at Veterans Park. I would love to see Steve Beachy unleashed on some really good sculpture and statues down in Northgate. I wish they'd say, you've got enough at Veterans Park for now, hit the pause button for a while. We need you in Northgate. In front of the parking garage is, I belabored it last time. I talked about how shameful I thought it was. I still do, but thank you for showing the pictures and putting it on the list. I vote yes. City manager, excellent opening comments today. Part of that, we're all learning what an organic entertainment zone is. Pop-up concerts, City Manager Woods proposed that to us. Temporary stage, something on the city surface lot. Let's try that, before we nuke something and start over down there. Let's try if they can set up a UFC fight at the White House with a massive stage, we can put a small musical event on the city surface lot at Northgate. So we have enough student towers. They can do more of those, just not on Northgate proper. I think we need to protect Northgate, secure Northgate, improve Northgate, maintain Northgate. And then the last thing I'll finish with is branding. What I learned in this process, I wouldn't spend a whole lot of money on branding. You don't have to. Urban planners all over the world know about Northgate. Every single Aggie knows about Northgate. I'm not sure there's anything we can do from a branding standpoint that's going to add to the lore that it has already achieved. and hopefully will sustain. And that's all I had. Thank you very much, Mayor. Great presentation from staff.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Schaefer.
So I agree with Bob. Thanks for the presentation, you guys. And thanks to those of you from Northgate who've come this evening to speak to us. We really appreciate it. Sounds like there's a lot of good things that have happened in the past year, and I would agree with that from where I sit. Just going to the things that I think we've been asked to talk about tonight on, first of all, the upgrades, the things that are happening, the maintenance pieces, the design in front of the garage, et cetera. Those are great. Thanks for sharing those. I'm glad those are happening. I think there are still some additional things that you're talking about, and I would encourage us to do those. I'm going to go back to what we talked about in terms of an overlay. Anthony, you were talking about that, and I think I'll just make the point again. I think there must be something in between. Maybe, when I think of the word preservation, I think of really hardcore historic districts that dictate the color of your paint and whatever else you might do, which scares people, and it should, because that's a difficult thing to control from everybody. On the other hand, conservation might be a better way to think about it. Something that's a conservation overlay that has a way of addressing possibly, I don't know what it looks like, but possibly there's a height situation there. Possibly there are some other things that are done to help us with this conservation of the look and feel that we all seem to appreciate in that core area. And the last thing I think I would say is I do wish that we could look at the surface lot as a possible multi-use piece. I understand that the folks in business there see it. I'm beginning to understand more how important it is, and the teaser piece, I get that. I guess one of the things I immediately think is, can 50 spots be a teaser, or does it take 100? Is there a magic number of spots that you have to have for a teaser? And if it can be less, maybe that lot can be less parking and more something else, some kind of multi-use space that can be activated for events and other kinds of things. It could definitely be made to be slightly more attractive by the addition of some trees and maybe a median. That would take some spaces, I presume, but there are examples of parking lots right here in College Station and certainly in other places that are significantly more appealing to the eye. And that could add to the aesthetic that we appreciate there now, with the arbor that's there with the trees that have been planted for 30 years or so. So I don't know. Those are my sort of things I think that address what we're being asked to do. On this last slide, I guess it's still in front of us. I think I tend to lean toward a combination of some of the above options, which would be a public-private partnership of some kind, which we I don't know if we had that exactly before a year and a half ago, or when we got started on this thing, but I think some kind of maybe public-private partnership could be good. A couple of the plans that were, at least one of them that was available even at that time, had some public space in it that I thought was relatively attractive and could have been a nice piece to begin to make this easier to activate in terms of programming, because I think the point's been made that programming is a big piece of this. There's been an interesting thing talked about in the Texas A&M 150th anniversary celebration, which is going to happen next year, and I don't know if it's going to happen now or not, but it was the idea of having some artists come and do a mural competition, and downtown Bryan was talked about, and then Northgate was talked about, and I think there are interesting things out there related to art and music and events that if we could, and I know it's easier said than done, but if we could get some of those kind of things to come in and make Northgate an interesting place for, and I think, as was said tonight, I go down there sort of like Melissa. I go down there occasionally and definitely go to the Chicken and have a hamburger or some other places, but I don't go down in the evenings anymore. It's just not a scene for an old man like me. So I think
maybe we should go sometime just to see what it's really like.
Yeah, I should. You're right. Just to see the experience it. Yeah, but there are ways to activate it as I think everybody is in favor of, that would get a different clientele down there through some of these things that could happen in a quasi public space or something that might require some additional room beyond just the promenade. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see some additional ideas for that people could get around the table and really focus on this spot, not the entire thing necessarily. We need some real time to think about this spot and what it could be. And there are examples all over the country, I think, that we could bring to it, that we could look at and think, well, maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that. Some are going to be doable, some aren't, some are going to cost a lot of money, some less, but I think it deserves some real attention. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Smith?
Thank you, Mayor. It was a great presentation. I appreciate all of the ideas that were shown to us. The taking care of what we got is something that I feel is very important. So taking care of the hardscape there by the garage, taking care of the furniture, the planter boxes, all of that stuff, we need to up our game on that. I mean, I know we're in the process, and that's great, but we need to not look away from it and let it go back the way it was. So the city is responsible for the infrastructure down there in Northgate, whether it be the promenade, the parking lot, the planter boxes, the parking garage, all of that stuff. And we need to own that responsibility and do our part of keeping up with that. I think there may be a bit of the broken window syndrome where if you aren't taking good care of it, then it looks like maybe that encourages some of the bad things that happen on the periphery. So it's really important that we take good care of our part of it. We need to take good care of the sanitation area. It needs to not look trashy. It needs to look like a place where you would be comfortable going there. And again, those are city responsibilities. We are also responsible for safety, the public safety. And, you know, I asked about the business owners and do they have a problem with that? And apparently the ones who are doing it right are the ones who are here, which I appreciate that. But where are the ones that aren't, and why aren't they being held to account for what they're doing and or not doing? And whose responsibility is that? Is that TABC? We need to address that, and also I think we need to address it in partnership with the association. It's sort of like there should be some self-policing going on. You all need to hold your associates to accountable for their contributions to problems and solutions. And you can't just say, well, I took care of mine. The city could say that too. We could clean everything up and say, hey, it's up to you now. But we can't do that. We're responsible for safety. So, and I would like to propose that we partner with the business owners, property owners down there in addressing the safety issues. And we do know there are some things like a police substation is an element of that, and an increased presence. Or there's possibly some architectural issues. You know, you can design spaces where they don't create little holes where bad things can happen. You can build things so that the access is more controllable, so that you can so that you can improve the safety of those spaces in those common areas, not just in the bars. So there's some of that we need to take a look at when we're doing these designs. Wanted to go to with the parking lot. You know, after hearing the teaser thing, the rideshare thing is, boy, okay. I spent a lot of time at Northgate, but it was in the 70s, and they didn't have rideshare, but it would have been a great thing to have. That is a godsend, and I think that, and so many people are comfortable using it. So it's like, this is great. It's a good solution, and I think that the city needs to facilitate that, the success of that. I like the surface lot being there. I would like it to be able to be have some multi-use aspects to it, and it could be prettier. I agree. But, well, back when I built that lot, it was a mud lot, and it was not as pretty as it is now. So, it is better.
We actually called it Mud Lot.
Yes, that's true. So anyway, I think that I do have some thoughts about the TABC activity. I mean, that's something maybe we need to have some dialogue with them and talk about what kind of leverage we can get, and with as many MIPs and bars as we have, why don't we have a TABC office here? Why do we have to go to Waco? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to get wound up in this venue, but I do have on my list that Costa mentioned it. Yeah, TABC is an issue, and I mean, we push on them hard, and I think that is something we are going to have to come back at, and I think will be helpful in this kind of what I feel like is a different environment of us as a community, because we are limited. They have specialized, ability that we don't, that could be utilized to scalpel, I think, some of these issues, and I think that is gonna be a piece. But I will tell you, it is not from lack of effort. And again, PD would be better to speak to that, but it is absolutely something that needs to improve.
Okay, thank you. I guess with that, I'll hand off.
Mr. Wright?
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to attend Justin's press conference tonight. It was my honor. I remember back real quick, I'm gonna be very brief, but I remember back when I was first elected, I had lunch with Courtney, and we kind of talked about getting all this back together. And I don't think it's been like a single effort. Obviously, it was a lot of different moving pieces, but it's really nice to see what it is now from what we had talked about before, when it felt like we were just pointing stuff out in Northgate, hoping it would change, and it feels like it's moving in that direction. So it's really exciting. But there are a lot of moving pieces, and I know I was an advocate for doing something with the parking lot, and I think it still has potential to be something, whatever that is. I think it is a much more collaborative effort now, and I think it'll be a little less scary to all involved. I definitely think we should move forward with an overlay and have that brought back to us before anything. I think if we need to resurface a lot, I think the time is to do it now. And then I think we probably don't know what we're going to want to do with it until we know if we're going to be able to go under university. I really think that that's the biggest contingent thing on everything. So there's not a ton of point to discount that giant project, and to have basically a park where University Drive is now will definitely change the use of that lot. So it's like, for the time being, I think we need to use it as is. But that does not negate the need, I think, for some sort of office down there for PD. And I think that was one of the driving reasons I was in favor of previous efforts around here, is for the safety reasons. And if we can get that into the garage, and then we can get into the garage. We just that can't be forgotten as well. I like the improvements that y'all have laid out. I think everything's moving in the right direction to kind of get it up to snuff while we wait for the next big push. But I'm really impressed with everything we were able to do. It's just nice that there's so much unity, it feels like, at least, on this project now. And I'm excited to see where it goes.
Yes, Mr. White, it's your turn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's always fun to kind of go last, because everybody kind of.
Well, if they already said it, just say ditto, ditto, ditto.
Oh, that's right. Well, I have a couple of thoughts that I want to share. So I agree with everything. Once again, thank you for the incredible presentation, and I want to commend the city manager for laying it out. I think he hit it perfectly when he said. The spirit of Northgate. We all know about the spirit of Aggie Land, and I truly believe there's the spirit of of Northgate there, and I strongly feel we need to capture that. I want to put in a plug. Our city manager said that the heyday was in the 2000s. Councilman Smith said that the 70s. Melissa said the 90s. I want to put in a plug for the 80s. Let me just tell you something. I hope Courtney doesn't look at the tables at the Dixie Chicken. My initials might be in it, and I can remember going to the campus theater and watching the Rocky Horror Picture Show many, many times on a Saturday night. So the heydays were in the 80s as well. But what that tells me is that for generations, Northgate is something that we all thought of. Councilman Yancey said, everybody knows about Northgate. We do know. And I believe the city needs to be the continuity to keep that culture, to keep that because the owners and the developers are all going to roll over. But Northgate will be Northgate, just like it was for everybody sitting on this dais tonight in the next 50 years, right? So we need to capture that culture, and I think we need to work with the bar owners. I think we need to work with the landowners. I think we need to work with the city. I think the city is going to be the continuity for many, many years to come. So I'm in favor of this preservation overlay. Okay, I'm in favor of that. Not because I think we need to do it, but I want to be able to have some mechanism in place so that in years and years and years, we can capture that dream and that wonderful experience we've all had at Northgate. I think that there's something to be said. The mayor mentioned free enterprise, free market. I'm all for that. But I think there's got to be not a lot of regulations, but a lot of working together doing it, but doing it within a structure and doing it within the city to make that happen. Let me talk a little bit about the surface lot. I believe and in total agreement with Mr. Schaefer. I think it needs to be a public-private partnership. I think it definitely needs to be something. I think that with signage in our parking garage, I think there's parking opportunities down there. I know rideshare is a great central location for that parking spot. Rideshare is a huge component for our safety issue. But I think we need to bring a venue, music venue, pop-ups, whatever it is, and use that space to bring in more visitors to our Northgate area. So once again, I know it's a moneymaker for the city, $500,000 that we're making on that. But I would love to begin the ability to reach out to our private partners and see if we can partner with them on putting it as a great venue down there. All my other thoughts have already been shared, so thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't have much to add either. I did express my interest in seeing some kind of a overlay idea put in there, whether it's conservation overlay or a preservation overlay or what you call it. I do think you need to test the idea somehow about height restrictions, but I don't think you can do that without deliberately seeking out the landowners, not just the businesses. Some of the businesses may be landowners. I don't know who owns all the land over there, but I know there are some landowners that are not active business owners as well, because they've leased their land out. But I think that has to be part of the discussion. I think the parking lot ought to be part of the solution, but probably not the first part. It's something the city brings into the discussion as part of maybe the incentivization for this. The only other two things I would add that haven't maybe been mentioned enough here. That barricade that was shown and that it was mentioned by one or two of the local people, it really is a game changer, but it's not a very aesthetically pleasing barricade. As I recall, and maybe I know you reminded me several times, TxDOT had an idea, and they were working on some kind of plan for extending the wall that they built, which wasn't very extensive. That may have all been put on hold while we're talking about the other thing, which is the underpass or overpass or whatever it is, the grade separation. And I do know the city manager is very actively engaged with the university and various funding partners. Because if that's done right, and Councilmember McElhaney mentioned it, you could turn the constricted front ends of many of those buildings, at least in half a block there, into a real front lawn, and have a whole opportunity for turning some of those businesses around, or they might have a business on both sides. So I think we shouldn't discount that. I think we should work with the city, and I mean, I'm part of the city, obviously, but I think the community needs to work with the city to convince the other partners that a small bridge isn't enough. We really ought to be looking at something a little more extensive that actually enhances what we're looking at here, and particularly in this core of Northgate. So pedestrian safety, everyday kinds of things. I will say for TxDOT and city planners, whoever was involved in this, as much as I'm mostly a vehicular driver through there, as much as I hate waiting 2 minutes at an intersection, I think those pedestrian-free zones are really worthwhile. I really think they pay off in terms of pedestrian safety, ease of moving people across the street. Well, you've got about 5 of them, I think, along there from Boyette all the way back to College Avenue, and I think those are a big plus. I don't know that they need to be changed or expanded. Maybe when we ultimately get a grade separation, we will probably rethink some of that. Anyway, I think from the point of direction, Anthony and city manager and Michael, I think enough has been conveyed here. I think the people on the dais have listened to the presentations and thought about this, certainly are following some of the lead ideas that the staff has presented to us. So I don't have anything more to add. Do you feel like you got direction out of this or not?
Yeah, I think we do, and I would just say, so I think, we want to see an overlay, and I think one of the big things is to maybe bookend some of what I said at the beginning. It is just a different conversation when you're like, let's talk about how we're going to do this versus coming and saying we have to do this. And that's a very anti-governmental type of a process that I think you're not going to see us just do it in this. We're going to try and do it in a lot of ways. So I did want to add a few things that I thought. One, I just can't love enough when someone in the city's like, you ought to do is charge for parking like appropriately per I mean, that's like my life's
Dynamic
mission.
pricing.
is right, and mostly because that's how you generate revenue for things that you don't pay taxes. People don't pay taxes for. You ask the user to do it. So I think that's fantastic. And we have upped those parking rates, but he's right. I mean, I think that's a great thing to look at that and be careful. The ride share that was mentioned, even in the scenario that I think people had so much concern about with the high rise, like ride share was a key component of that. That has to be a key component down here. Looking at what we do with pedestrian zones. Councilman Yancey mentioned it, and I didn't bring it up because, and this is probably, again, where we need to go the opposite way. I'm always concerned about if I bring up some of the things we're talking about, is it not going to happen? We're absolutely talking about more events down there. And I've talked to some of the folks in Northgate, that's something that we'll start talking about too. And I think it goes to maybe the larger picture, understanding that, hey, there's no immediate action that we need to take on the surface lot, except do we need to do maintenance and actually get it right. But I feel like I hear from all sides, and I think this is something we can come back to. Like, I love trying stuff out. There are a lot of things that happen in the city now that we see as permanent that were really just things that we decided to try and ended up working. So I think a lot of what we can do with the surface lot is try some things out and see if they work. And if years from now we find that closing down some roads on some nights or doing this or having events makes a lot of sense, that may lead us to a more permanent solution. And I think people are going to be a lot more open to trying something and knowing that it is not a permanent decision we're having to jump off a cliff. And I think we can push and try some really cool things in a lot of those areas that Councilman Yancey mentioned. If you go to them, there are a lot of people who've had real success, doing closures and things. And I think the business owners will have really good ideas about when to do that. Personally, not getting too much into it, I really think away games are an opportunity to do something down there, and I think there's some other times we can do it. So I think that's another thing that we'll do. And I do want to go back to, I feel like we do still have to come back and bring our public safety folks in and really focus down in on some of those problems. And the barriers that you're seeing that are not super attractive, but are what we're allowed to do because there is a process with TxDOT. I feel like everybody's trying to bait me into getting into it with state agencies tonight. But
Can we have that discussion about public safety like extremely soon?
yeah, we can bring it back. I think it's good momentum and just making sure that we can bring all sides in and have PD and fire and
Can you guys
some of
come
these
back
folks
in
in.
2 weeks? Same. Y'all can come back. Oh, did you hear that?
Yeah. So I would say we can talk about, how do we kind of get feedback and then but we can come back expeditiously to council. And again, I don't know that we're going to propose anything other than just say here are the things that we're.
I mean, if we're going to own this as an issue that we need to address, then it should happen quickly. So, I mean,
Yeah,
if there's a timing that works better, but we can't kick this can any longer.
Yeah, understood. So, all that to say, I think we can bring back and talk about options and specifically what we would do in an overlay, because I think that's what council said. We can talk about some of these other specific items that have been brought up by y'all and the folks from Northgate, and talk about maybe more about what are some things we're going to try and what does that look like and what's the overall goal, which I also think, to Kosa's point, that's one of the ways I think we translate the idea other than just what do the planners think is good. We say, well, we think this is good, but we're just going to try it. And if it doesn't work, then we're going to stop. And just so everyone knows too, there are things we're doing down there now that we're like, I don't know that this is working anymore, and we probably need to switch it up too. So it's a combination. And then, again, lastly, we can certainly come back on the public safety side. So I think I've covered at least all of what I've heard, and we'll go back and pull specifics. But unless there's anything else, I think on the staff side, we're good.
I'm sorry, I had one other note, Mayor.
Yes,
On
please.
the conditional use permits, I think that the climate and the understanding of how those work and how they impact, we had discussed at one point whether or not that needed to be just core Northgate, or do we want to leave all of the grandfathering in perpetuity in all of those bars? Is that a discussion that we need to have again at this point?
I think if we come back and talk about public safety, I think we need to do very similar.
Okay, so that would be part of that discussion?
It will be, I will say that it will be tougher. There's, you heard some of the concern, but I think we can lay that all out with no vote sitting there, right? So that we can all just talk about.
For discussion. Sounds good.
Okay, any other comments for the good of the order? We've got a regular agenda ahead of us, but it's a very short one. Anything further need to be said?
Oh, and I should mention one more thing. We are lined up for that federally. Don't ask me to explain the federal budgeting process, but we have a marker in for funding for that pedestrian overpass, underpass. What I'm going to say as an advocate for Northgate is, if you look, the MPO and others are doing another study on what part of University that crossing should be. I think I've made my feelings very clear as to the fact that this is the place it should be, that all of the other ones are good, but this is the critical one. I think that's another thing for us as a community to talk about, is there are lots of good places, but this is a different place. It's not just a crossing. And so I would just say that from an advocacy standpoint, I think we all need to lean in on that.
Yes, and I think the legislative session, just tapping legislative affairs on the shoulder here, that ask or the participation of the state in that is an important component too, and we're setting up this fall for that dialogue. I think our local representatives will certainly be willing to have that dialogue with us, and it's going to be all hands on deck to pull together enough money to really do the best job we could possibly do along there on that pedestrian grade separation. Well, if there aren't anything else, thank you all for attending, and thank you for representing some of the interests in Northgate and making presentations tonight, and frankly, you stay engaged regularly with the staff, which is really where the work gets done. Thank you, Anthony and Michael, for helping us work through some of this discussion. Hopefully we can move that agenda forward soon on some of the items and maybe a longer term on some of the others. But good discussion. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the regular agenda, which we have just one item. Cole, somewhere, some staff person is going to be there. There he comes. Public hearing presentation. This is item 9.1. Public hearing, presentation, discussion, possible action on ordinance vacating and abandoning 0.016 acre portion of a generally 20-foot wide public utility easement. Said easement lying over across and upon Lot 3, Block 9 of the Pebble Creek subdivision, Phase 11B, generally located 1902 Pebble Bend Drive, according to the plat recorded in the volume 20,029, page 189 of the official public records of Brazos County, Texas. Cole Gableman will make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Cole Gableman, Planning and Development Services. This easement being requested for abandonment is a 10-foot wide portion of an existing 20-foot wide public utility easement located at the rear of 1902 Pebble Bend Drive, which is part of Pebble Creek Phase 11B. The 20-foot wide public utility easement at the rear of the property abuts Lick Creek floodplain. The utility easement has never housed utilities. The request for the abandonment was initiated by the applicant due to the homeowner's desire to construct a swimming pool in the rear of their property. All utilities have been approved, have approved this request. We have not received any inquiries. Staff recommends approval of this abandonment, and I'm available for questions.
Didn't we have one of these out on the south side of town?
We did, in Mission Ranch.
Okay, I thought
Yes,
the
sir.
very same kind, almost looks like a similar picture.
Yeah.
And it's only one lot, but it's because of a swimming pool that people want to build. Any questions? We got a public hearing I got to open, but if there's any questions for staff, I'll take those first. Yes, Mr. Schaefer?
This is, I probably should have learned this, or maybe I did before and forgot, but what happens to this piece of property, Cole? Does this become part of that lot? Do the owners now take control of this property and it becomes theirs?
Yeah, so it is already theirs. There's an easement dedicated over the top of it. Once the ordinance is approved, then that part of the property can now be available, and then it gets filed with the county.
In other words, our fire and water and wastewater people have all looked at this, and
Yes, sir.
they have no problem with it because everything's on the front
Yes, sir.
of these lots. Okay, this is a public hearing, so I'll open the public hearing. I have no one signed up to speak. I see no one coming forward, so I will close the public hearing and we'll turn to the will of the council.
Mayor.
I think I heard, we do have somebody who wants to speak. I'm sorry, you didn't sign up.
I didn't. If I could just take a few
Please
minutes.
come forward and identify yourself, and then before you leave, make sure you get tied up over
Absolutely. I apologize for not signing up. We weren't quite sure I was going to be able to make this meeting. My name is Alexis Flores. I am one of the owners of Rush Bar on Northgate. Just wanted to kind of take a second to introduce myself. We've been open less than a year, as you guys know. We're very aware that we are the problem child on Northgate. That is not.
Oh, you're talking about Northgate?
Ma'am, yeah.
You're talking
Attorney's
about
flagging us.
Northgate?
We can't talk about that.
This, we're talking, if you're talking about Northgate, could you just wait a minute?
Yes.
We're in the middle of a discussion of a totally different item.
Sorry about that.
Okay, I will get to you in a minute. I'll let you talk, okay? But the public hearing is regarding this particular lot that's up here on the screen. Okay. Anybody wants to speak about this item? I didn't see anybody, so I'll close the public hearing and turn to the will of the council.
Move to approve.
Second.
A motion made by Mr. White, seconded by Ms. McElhaney. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
Thank y'all.
Now, we did have a discussion in Northgate. If you'd like to come forward, as long as you're here. We had a lengthy discussion.
Mayor.
And, excuse me.
I'm no parliamentarian, but
well,
I think we need to we have to be careful here. I guess you can reopen the item. If not, my alternative either way is I'd be happy to speak with her
Okay.
offline and/or
Would
set her
you-
up so she could provide comments to council.
Would you
Just
be
want to be
willing to
careful about the
speak
legality.
afterwards to the city manager and just explain to him what your interests are?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
that's the best way to do it. Thank you very much. Appreciate your commentary, Mr. Woods. All right. So we finished regular agenda. We are on to item 10, items of community interest and council calendar. I think you have the calendar on the screen and also a copy of it in front of you. 4th of July is the main item here. Don't forget that. I think you all got parking passes in your box if you haven't picked it up. Anything on community interest anybody wants to raise?
Mayor, just one question to the city manager. Is that meeting on July the 6th? What time does that start at?
I think, let me look real quick. I think it's at 5:30 because we
Thank-
wanted to make
5:30 is
sure.
the calendar piece that we got's 5:30, clearly.
Yeah, I think we've done it earlier in the past, but figured it's normally not a long meeting. It's where we just introduce the budget. It's actually where we officially give it to you all. But we thought this year we'd do it a little later, just so that, again, if a member of the public wanted to come, then they're got a better chance at doing that.
But the only agenda item is to present the budget.
Yep, it's so that anybody hearing it is clear, we present it in a very basic form. This is not the big public meeting. This is basically when we give the council my proposed budget, we hit the wave tops of it to say, here's generally what's in there, and that's basically the official handoff. But there are the budget hearings, and then with you all, where we go through all the budget, and then the budget required public hearings and things that we do after the fact. This is just the initial handoff.
But the workshop, the budget workshop will be based on what you get handed on the 6th, plus.
Yeah, you'll get the document on
And
the
then
6th.
a week later, we have the 2, possibly 3 afternoons of.
And it'll be posted publicly and everything
Yeah.
when it comes to you all. But just because sometimes people come and they're like, I thought we were gonna hear the whole budget, and it's 15 minutes of us basically saying, we've given you the budget, here it is.
And Mayor,
they'll
just to add on to that, the only action that is taken is to call the public hearing on the budget. That happens the same night that we present the budget to you.
And the hearing is after the workshop, so
Correct.
adjustments can be made in the final budget that we will actually have the public hearing on. Okay, any further questions on that?
Thank you for that.
Community calendar, anything, community interest? Seeing none, we'll move forward to reports on committees, boards, and commissions. I see no one coming forward on that, so we'll move to future agenda items. In a review of standing list, I think the standing list is probably on the back of this item, so you can look ahead at least what's planned at the moment for the next 2 meetings. Seeing nothing further there, then what do we got next? Oh, my goodness, item 13. If there's no objection, we are adjourned.